Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Friday Night live dream interpretation. I'm super excited to be with all of you today. So much is going on. Been on the road for a good portion of the day, so I've had a lot of incredible conversations. But we got a lot of people that have a lot of dreams. So let's um, let's pray, and we'll get started right away. Father God, we thank you for this wonderful, incredible time to approach your throne. Excuse me. Holy Spirit, we ask that you would be here with us tonight. We ask that you would gift us the gift of your presence, the spirit of wisdom, word of wisdom, word of knowledge, revelation. The spirit of revelation would be here. Dreams, visions, and prophecy. God, you said to ask for more. Paul said to eagerly desire these gifts, God, and so we ask. And may it be said of us, may we be numbered among those that says can stand in the counsel of the Lord to see and hear your word. God, that we would be those that can understand your figurative language, your visual language, and can interpret it into written and auditory. God, we thank you so much for the privilege of hearing from you in dreams and hearing the interpretation that you have for us. Bless this time. Just pour out your spirit on each person here. Increase their gift of interpretation. Increase the amount of visions and dreams that they have. Increase their remembrance of visions and dreams, Lord, and prompt them to write them down that they may hear from you all that you have for them in their life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, all right. So, yes, I am wearing the new hoodie. Official Dream Life hoodie. Um, all right. So let's get started. Candy McGill, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Oh, wow. I'm so impressed that you have my audio. I am so impressed.
Well, good.
So, I'm sorry you can't see me though. Let's just be happy with audio.
Let's do it. So tell me your dream.
Okay. I had disrobed in my dream. I had disrobed and wrapped a towel around myself. I was standing when somebody put their finger in my back and they leaned into me. And I was thinking it was a specific male friend of mine. And I leaned back into him and I said, I sent you a message last night. Did you get it? Then I turned my head and I found out it was not my friend at all. It was a young boy who was disturbed from a youth center named Isaiah. And I moved away from him and he began staring at me and moving toward me while making sexual innuendos and sexual remarks. I tried to get away from him and he grabbed my arm. I then, with my hand, even though he had my arm, I still was able to use my hand. I grabbed a white vase. I was going to smash it on his head, so he let go, but his arm was too strong. So finally, I broke away and I ran to another room. The other room turned out to be in a basement. I went down the stairs and it was like another apartment was there. There was a hallway with several rooms. All of them were different shades or different themes of a pinkish color. Nobody was there. It was very neat and very pretty there. I liked it, but I was looking for help. Then I was in a salon and this woman picked up my feet and she placed them on another woman's lap. And the other lady whose lap my feet were placed on began to trim my toenails. This sounds so bizarre. Um, and I asked, am I in a beauty salon? And then I asked, can I use your phone so I could call the police on this boy because I was frightened of him? I phoned the police, but they never came. I went back to find the supervisor of these kids, and I found the room was full of recliners. It had recliners in it, and there was a TV in it. And then I found my male friend, and I told him that he had to get their stuff out, as I had decided not to rent to them. And I tried to tell him about this boy, but he ignored me. I saw there were toys all over the floor that belonged to the teacher's son. And then I believe later the room was empty or being emptied. And then I awoke.
Wow, that's a long one.
Sorry.
Huh?
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just trying to keep straight all the details. So you had just stepped out of the shower. You were in a towel, and somebody pointed their finger in your back. You thought it was your male friend, but it was this guy, Isaiah, who was troubled and then started making advances towards you. And then you went into the other room, which was the hallway in the basement. Is that right so far?
Yes. Except there was no shower. I was just, for some reason, wrapped in a towel.
Okay. Just wrapped in a towel. Okay.
Don't know why.
Yeah. Well, you were in a place of exposure. You were in a place of exposure where you didn't feel fully covered. You thought you were among friends, and it turned out not to be the case. It actually turned out that you were in a place of danger.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of poking you in the back, it's like stabbing you in the back, but not as hard. It's not actually breaking skin. It's more of an irritation than it is like a massive betrayal. And the fact that you thought it was your friend, I think, alludes to this kid Isaiah is sort of kind of related to that friend or that friend's ministry or something.
Not related, but he is one of the kids that is in that school group. I mean, I know you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
He is one of the kids, but I don't even know that it was him in the dream. I just know the name was in the dream.
Right.
But yeah, it turned out not to be David. It turned out to be Isaiah.
Right. So it's really the offspring of what that person represents, and that person is embroiled with coming after you and having actually trying to get in bed with you, meaning to just partner with you in such a way that it's something that you don't want to partner with at all. And so you're like, no, I'm out, I'm leaving. Going down to the basement represents just getting to the bottom of things. It's a foundational type of journey where you want to find out what's really going on, what's really happening. In the midst of being in that place, you're also in a place of transition because there's a long hallway. The hallway is pinkish in color. For some reason, I just heard blood. I'm not sure what that has to do with the situation at all. But to me, it felt like it wasn't like, and I know pink is different than red, but it was just whether there's blood on someone's hands or it's the idea of being a bloody transition, it kind of represents the same thing. Now, from there, you end up in the salon. Is that right?
Yeah, and then the next thing I know, I was no longer in this pretty pink apartment type place. The next thing I know, I'm in like this pinkish room, but suddenly it's now a salon.
Right.
And I'm asking, am I in a salon?
Right. Okay, so the idea of being in a salon represents a change of mindset. Typically, salons are places that women go to get their hair done. And it's a change of hair, particularly a change of hair color in the dream would represent a change of mindset. But I think the salon just signifies you going to a place where you're about to change your mind on something, maybe reverse a decision, perhaps go in a completely different direction. But what's interesting is, as far as I know, you weren't actually getting your hair done. You were getting work on the opposite end of your body. You were getting your toenails clipped, right?
Yeah, and not, it wasn't like I went there to do it. It's just some woman picked my foot up and put it in another woman's lap, and she began to do that.
Right. So feet as we see in Ephesians 6, right? Feet is the readiness of the gospel of peace, right? It's the ability to propagate the gospel, to move forward in an Ephesians 6 sense. But it also represents your ability to move forward on your own. It's probably the most solitary form of travel there is simply walking. So if you're getting your feet prepped, it can mean several things. One in particular, that there's a situation you're walking away from. Two, the idea that you're preparing for a new journey, whatever that looks like. And three, the idea, of course, wanting to groom and primp. And, obviously, ladies like to get their nails done, particularly in the summer where they can wear sandals and be seen. And so I believe what it is it's simply preparation for the next season that you're going to walk into after what I talked about earlier has happened.
Yes, and all of what you have said so far, you've nailed it. Everything you said has nailed it. Everything. I walked away at all of it. All of it. You've nailed it so far.
Wow. Was there anything else after the song?
I did ask to use their phone so I could call the police because I was afraid of this boy. He was making kind of innuendos, but he seemed more violent to me than anything. So I was afraid of him, and I phoned the police, but they never came. I went back to find David, who was the supervisor of these kids, and I walked into a room that was full of recliners in front of a TV. And then I found David. I told him, hey, you got to get your recliners out of here. I changed my mind. I'm not renting to you. And I need to tell you about what this kid did, but he ignored me. And then I saw these toys all over the floor that belonged to the teacher's son. And then the next thing, our room was empty and I woke.
Okay. So the idea of trying to call the police, but it didn't work or the police didn't show up, right?
Right.
I feel like it's either unnecessary to pursue a legal course of action.
Well, I felt like I'm sorry, I forgot to interject. I felt like I had maybe given them the wrong address. And I thought, well, maybe that's why they didn't show up. Maybe I gave them the wrong address.
Okay. So I feel like the thing that you want remedies isn't necessarily going to be remedied or the situation fixed by bringing in a legal authority as far as like a criminal injunction or some sort of pressing charges. That's not necessary. What is probably necessary is to talk to the guy that is in charge. However, the guy that's in charge blew you off. And again, I see just the idea, it's like the teacher's kids' toys being all over the floor. It's the idea that this guy doesn't have his house in order. And that's why when you talk to him, he kind of blows you off. The room is full of recliners, which means everybody's like in this lazy attitude, laissez-faire, hands off. We don't want to get involved. And they're kind of mesmerized with this distraction, which is what the television room and the recliners represent. And the toys all over the floor is just like, dude, you're the teacher. You should be taking care of your kids and watching what your kids do and picking up their mess or making sure they do. And that's not even happening. And so you're like, okay, just I'm out, take the recliners, take this lazy, we don't want to clean up after ourselves. We've made a mess and we don't want to remedy the situation. We're not taking care as fathers of what our sons are doing and owning their behavior and disciplining them. And it's just a bad situation. And the reason why it's bad is because it's the idea of involuntary discipleship. Like sons are going to copy what their fathers do, whether they want to or not. And so the idea that this guy has this attitude, doesn't want to help you, and doesn't clean up after himself, it's just like, okay, I don't want any part of the sons or the fathers of whatever this particular thing is.
Okay. Everything you said is totally nailed it, except in relation to the real life part of this, because this is all about something that actually happened. Is I would have never called the police. I had no desire to call the police. I just had made a decision to say, nope, I don't want you guys here. I'm not renting to you. I'm not doing this. We're going to stop it now. After I found out what I found out, we're stopping it. But no, there was no desire to actually call police. But yet in the dream, I did.
Did you say that somebody gave you their phone so you could call the police?
I had asked in the salon, "Can I use your phone? Am I in a salon? Can I use your phone? I need to, because I needed to call the police on that boy because I was afraid of him. He was
Right.
stalking me, and I was afraid of him."
I feel like I feel like somebody is going to advise that you press charges. I don't even know what that means. I don't know the totality of the situation, but I feel like asking for help or saying, "Hey, this is what's going on," them giving you their phone is giving you the ability to, whether it's like, well, hey, I have an attorney. Well, hey, you should do this, and hey, you should do that. And I think the actionable intel is just what you said. It's just get out, leave the situation alone. But you don't have to go down the road of taking legal action against this entity or this guy or his son or this kid, because
Right.
you're not going to get your relief that way.
Yeah, I don't know why I felt that way in the dream, because I certainly didn't feel that way in real life. However, now in retrospect, you mentioned something somewhere in there about blood. Do you remember what part of that you?
Yeah, the pink hallway in the basement. I just saw like there was blood on the walls, even though it was kind of diluted. It wasn't like a gory scene, but I just felt the word blood.
The only thing that I can think about, I mean, now I kind of have to come out with a little bit about the reality of this. I was getting ready to rent to this entity of troubled youth, kind of school, kind of juvenile program, and I was friends with the director of the program, and I became friends with the director of the program when he used to be our sheriff. And I had a man who attacked me, beat me, and was beating me with his fists, and I couldn't get away from him. And I grabbed a pair of wire cutters on the seat of my truck, and I stuck him in the hand so he would let go of my shirt and I could get away. And blood went everywhere when that happened. That's the only blood that I can think of. So if it has to do with the fact that I was friends with this director, because he literally really did save my life. He got that man out of the state, and I really did have this man on a pedestal. But the man was never a Christian. But I always knew that, and I never hesitated to let my position with God be known. So I never hid that at all. But that would be the only blood that would have been in it, would have been when David got that guy out of the state. They literally ran him out of the state.
Is that when you met him?
That was when I met David, yes, because David investigated what happened. And the guy who beat me, who I stabbed in the hand, ended up with a year in prison. And then they ran David as sheriff, ran him out of the state, literally ran him and his girlfriend out of the state. And they moved and went back to Nebraska. So that was the end of him. But
Well, it's interesting because that happened in the basement. And when you mentioned the basement, I said, well, you're getting down to the foundation of things. Well, the very foundation of your relationship with David was literally birthed through a bloody situation.
It was. Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what happened. The man came after me with a brick and busted out the window of my vehicle. He was trying to kill me by busting out the driver's side window and hitting me with a brick. So David literally saved my life, and I've always had this great respect and admiration for David. I've always thought very highly of him. He was always my hero, and that's just kind of went with the territory. And so when the need for this school to have a place to go came up, well, I was the first one there to say, hey, sure, I'll help you. You guys you can move on my property. I'll rent it to you. And so that's how the whole thing came about. But then when I found out that David had done something criminal, then I thought, okay, God now knows that I know what David did. And if I hide it or I cover it up, then I become a participant of it. I become a party to it.
Yeah.
and I can't cover that up.
No.
I can't. My relationship with God is worth too much, and I just won't
Well,
do
I feel
that.
like that's part of the actionable intel of the dream is to not get involved legally,
Is
not get involved in the, whether it's turning him in or reporting him, but not getting involved in the quagmire that could be, well, now you got to be a witness, or now this has to happen, and that stuff can drag out for years. And I feel like the actionable intelligence is to evict them, take your toys, take your kids, take your recliners, and get out, and to back away from the situation and to prepare yourself, which is the salon scene, for the walk that God has for you next, without them in the picture. Cool dream, though.
well, it is now that you interpreted it. I mean, I had it that night when all of this happened. That night,
Uh,
I had that dream, and of course, I recorded it, and I could understand part of it, but then I thought maybe I'm too close to the situation. I didn't understand all of it, so and it
no,
was
that's awesome.
relevant to the moment. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Candy, for sharing your dream. I appreciate it. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Cool. I love it when, not often, but every once in a while, dreams can be immediately proven, or dream interpretations can be immediately proven correct. And I love it when that happens. Randy Gilbert.
There we go. You can hear me?
Hey, there you are, buddy. How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Hey, I'm really appreciative. I've been listening to these now for what, the last 3, maybe 4 months, and haven't had any dreams that I really felt like I needed to share. But this one happened just a couple days ago, and would love to share it with you. I feel like I have most of the interpretation, but would really want your insight, your opinion on it.
Yeah.
It's well, let me go into it. I had a dream that I was in another country in an old car as a passenger. It was going along a dirt road, and there was a woman in the car in the back that was saying that she needed to get out to find a place to pee. And I needed to, or basically, we believe that we were, fleeing from something, and that's why we were in the car together. And that the driver, though I don't know who he was, said that he couldn't go to the town, and the driver basically was looking for a place to pull over and find a place that she might be able to pee. And so there was a place that looked like might offer some some privacy and a safe place to pull over, and did. She got out, and I got out mostly to provide, I thought, protection. And instead, I heard something coming, and instead of the guys that were chasing us, at least I have no idea who they were, but thought they were chasing us. There was a whole bunch of sheep that came running down the road, and so I ran back to the car, almost sort of a panic when I'd heard the sound, but was actually glad to see that it was just sheep. I don't remember actually getting back to the car, but I woke up, and and so it, if I could just maybe go through what I feel like is the interpretation, if that would be okay. Uh, and the dirt road is I well, at least in the car driving down the dirt road, I feel like I was moving toward a destiny on a road that wasn't finished. It basically was something, perhaps even sort of an untried method. And I think because I'm in the sim class, that that one of the things that I'm working on, that I believe God has been giving me through these dreams, is to be what he's calling an ecclesia warrior. And so I feel like I'm basically traveling in that direction, or in a car heading that way, that it's not finished. And then it felt like it was a unfamiliar territory, or another country. And so I felt like that guy was saying, well, this is just basically, you're moving in unfamiliar territory. uh, the woman that had to pee, I know from my wife's experience, and other women, that when they're pregnant, that they have to pee a lot. And the last couple of days, I've been a part of a team that have been praying really hard, round the clock, 24 hours a day, to pray against abortion. And again, I feel like that's been something that I've been charged with as an ecclesia warrior, to come against. In fact, God even gave me a dream about the naming the spirit of abortion, called Nesselrod. And anyways, it's something because of, I believe God is actually going to reverse Roe versus Wade, that we're saving a whole bunch of pregnant women from having abortion. So that's what I believe is what we were doing, was potentially saving the life of this baby, through saving the mom. And then it was basically found sort of a sparse location, primitive, not much growing there yet. And it's something where I really feel like this is something where, as a part of what we're doing with the mentoring program that you have, as far as the spiritual intelligence group, that it's sparse now, but I have this real strong feeling that it's something that is going to become lush, and God talks about, in Israel, basically there's desert land, but we're moving into an area that God is going to cause immense growth. And then the panic, I feel like the feeling was, you got to stay with the car. You need to keep on moving. You need to not get sidetracked. And lately, I've been sort of going through taking things out of my life, so that I can focus on what God's been talking to me about, with being an ecclesia warrior. And of course, one of the things I really, really want to do is get into the Sim 3. And so I've been working on this dossier that that we've needed to do. And so anyways, we're shutting down, or I've been a president of Literacy Volunteers here locally for 10 years. And so I'm getting out of that, gotten out of a lot of church things. I just gave up being the chair of our local political party, the Republican Party, which was a real big deal to me, because I helped to turn Virginia red, very clearly. Was a part of doing that, and God speaking through dreams that you've been teaching me how to do, that was able to share those words with the now governor. And so he won the election. I think he would have won it by a higher percentage if we did have what God's calling righteous elections. So I'm going to be sticking with that part of what I've done before. But anyways, I just wanted to sort of get your sense of, this is the kind of thing that God's been doing as far as giving me dreams. I feel like they come to pass almost immediately. And I don't know, if that's the right way to be looking at some of these things. But I feel like, I feel blessed, first of all, that that you've been teaching me how to do this. And I've got notebooks full of dreams that he's given me over this year, because of starting with that free course that you offer, and learning all about the dreams of the Bible, or that have happened in the Bible. And so that's it.
Randy, you're amazing. I love the fact that you use spiritual intelligence to literally turn the state of Virginia red, help get the governor elected, the lieutenant governor, the new Speaker of the House. I mean, glory to God. You know, when we started talking about a spiritual intelligence service or like an agency that could literally advise on a governmental level, one of the first things I think, you know, I shared with you earlier, that I had seen and God just kind of gave me was the idea that we would have campaign strategies, and particularly what you guys did in Virginia. I can't wait to hear the whole story, but by what I've heard, you know, to defeat literally election fraud,
Yep.
and to win, and not just one or two, like to win the whole state. And I think that's, you know, Lord willing, is going to be a model for what God wants to do in 2022 with the midterms. But man, what a fascinating dream. This is a fascinating...
There's a couple more things that I'd love to share with you that as a part of the interpretation, well, especially the lambs. When I was, you know, asking the Lord, well, what does that mean? He told me to go back to a dream that was. I'm an avid fan of Dutch's Dutch Sheets, his Give Him 15 thing that he's been doing, and God gives him lots and lots of dreams from different people, and so God told me to go back to June 15th, that specific date, and go back there, and so it was a dream that was given to him by Greg Hood, and the dream was about these lambs that he needed to be able to make a declaration. You know, lambs, get on your feet, and well, first of all, they need to expose why they weren't turning into lions, and there was a whole bunch of ticks that were in their in their wool, and of course the interpretation of that was politics that they had gotten involved in, and anyways, they got rid of the politics with this oil to get rid of them, but then they turned into lions, and it was fascinating that the lions roared, you know, so it was basically we as you know, as God's you know, children need to mature and become lions. And anyways, you know, so I was thinking that the sheep that were coming down the road, thank God, they weren't the bad guys, they were all the good guys, but they're all the ones that, you know, hadn't yet turned into lions. And anyways, what was fascinating was I had never heard of this guy, Kurt Landry. And you know, sometimes what pops up you know, on YouTube after, you know, watching something that is similar, this guy Kurt Landry's post came up, and he was talking about it, and it was the same day, December 14th, the same day that he's talking about a dream that he had a year ago. You know, so for the one, June 15th, was about 6 months before, but this particular dream was 12 months before, and his dream was about it was like a Moses character standing there in the Red Sea, and instead of the children of Israel, it was a whole bunch of sheep that were there ready to cross, and so Moses. He makes basically a declaration for them to basically, you know, cross the Red Sea, but only some of them were able to cross because they're the ones that turned into lions, and they roared really loud and were able to run run across. And so anyway, it was a very, very similar dream that all of a sudden just, you know, this guy was told by God to bring up this dream 12 months later, and you know, the importance for us as Christians to become mature and to become lions, and so anyways, I feel like a part of the reason that they were sheep, and a part of the reason for me traveling as I am down this road that's not finished yet, is because I need to lead these sheep to where we are going to have, you know, a good, complete, finished road, and you know, basically taking it, you know, continuing on the path where I'm going. So anyways, it was just amazing that you know, you got two dreams that are given, you know, that God is saying, pay attention to these two dreams that were given by somebody else, And what was fascinating was all the things you've been talking about with the spiritual intelligence is from 1 Corinthians 13 of being able to have sort of a vision in part, but because we are now capable with the intelligence, with the computers, with the internet, I mean, even what we're doing now, being able to share our dreams around the world or across the United States. It's just amazing that that God made that happen on the same day, to bring that intelligence sort of from a dream from other people together. So anyways, I was just really excited about this and glad I get to share it with you.
Yeah, man. Wow, that's incredible. I had a couple of thoughts on your dream.
Yes, please.
Definitely agree with the new country. Being in a different country is exploring new territory. Obviously, the dirt road represents the idea of pioneering. It's not paved yet. There may be some that are going before you, but it's certainly not, a residential neighborhood. It's kind of off the beaten path, kind of off-roading it, sort of. The idea that you're in a car, an older car that somebody else is driving, but you're in the passenger seat, which means you're the navigator. It's really interesting. And if you look at the work that you did, particularly in politics this year, you were in that exact seat where you were helping to guide other people who were doing things like, turning Virginia red, So I think the position of somebody as an advisor, particularly at the level that you're an advisor at, using spiritual intelligence represents the road, but it also represents the old car represents kind of the old game. It's not a new game that you're in. Politics has kind of been around for a long time. What's also interesting is there's other people that are, I just hear riding your coattails, people in the back seat. And they're the ones that kind of want to determine where we go, when we stop, because of a need that they have. And so when you pull over, now you said you were being chased, right? Your car was, you were driving away quickly because you felt like you were being chased.
And I think that was related to what's happening with the abortion thing. We've been, like God's gotten me up at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to really contend hard against Satan with all of the things that are going on, so that we can, basically reverse Roe versus Wade.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I just did a dream last night that Matt Lockett and Lou Engle talked about. They shared publicly and did a decode on it, and it was mind blowing what God was sharing. But it was all about that issue, abortion, the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It's interesting, though. I see us as chasing them in the Roe versus Wade thing, because they have the upper hand. They have the position in that. It's been a strongly, almost a 50-year precedence. What they have, they started oral arguments in Roe versus Wade in 1971, so it's literally 50 years in 2021. But 2022, it'll be it was 73. It actually passed. But anyway, I feel like that has certainly a part of it, but I also feel like it's something else. I feel like it's the idea that they feel like you pulled a fast one, literally in the car running away, and they want to come after you. And to me, I think it might have to do with what happened in the election, because now you guys are getting away. You've created distance. You're pioneering. It's a new road, and they're coming after you like, we want to know what the heck happened and why we lost and why our stuff didn't work. And so I feel like there's a component of it that has to do with that as well. And it's interesting because when you got out of the car and you knew these people were chasing you, all of a sudden what showed up was sheep. And I heard wolves to sheep is what I heard. And so I think it's really interesting because sheep are obviously followers. They're, in the care of a shepherd. And wolves are, it's particularly biblically, wolves really represent false prophets and those that would deceive, but those that would deceive using a false report, such as fake news. They also represent leaders. So the idea of politicians, Operation Mockingbird, in conjunction with the media, purporting fake news propaganda, all those things to lead people astray, they then become sheep, which means they turn into followers. I think is really a solving of the problem, even more so than the demise of the people that would be chasing you. So I find that very encouraging as well.
Oh, amen. Yeah, yeah. In fact, there was an article this morning about the Democrats trying to figure out what the Republicans did in Virginia, so they could do it too, kind of thing. So, but I have a feeling it's just to try to destroy what we've made as far as progress. I am so excited though about being able to just continue on with going down this pioneer road. Absolutely, it's really fascinating, and again, it's thanks right at the very beginning of the year, when I was introduced to your free course for being able to understand dreams in the Bible. God just told me that's what you got to pay attention to, and now I know why.
Man, that's amazing. I love the progress you're making. I love the work you're doing, Randy. You're such a blessing, man.
Yeah, it's certainly a pleasure, and there's so much more to come. I feel like the contending against the fake news. I heard directly from God that we're taking down the fake news, and what's come up lately, just report after report as it's working. CNN is coming down crashing, and there's so much more that God has, in order for us to do what we need to do. But thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Randy.
Yep, very welcome.
Wow. So encouraged by Randy's testimony and the things that God is doing through him and in him and his life. That's just amazing. Sleepy Jean.
Hi, John.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a newbie, so I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous.
So many to choose from right now, but I'll go with this dream. My family and I went to like a beach vacation spot, kind of like a peninsula. And at one point, I was walking along the beach and I found 3 really awesome shells, and they were kind of stacked on top of each other, kind of like a Russian matryoshka doll. They were all the same, but one was bigger, and then so just a little pile. And then I was kind of briefly distracted because my family decided, well, we got to get back to our vacation rental. We're going to borrow one of the cars here in the parking lot. I don't know about ethics and dreams, but my husband picked, a pretty sensible, they're all nice cars, but he picked a pretty sensible one. My daughter, for some reason, was not here at this point, and my son got into the passenger seat of a blue convertible. He's like, let's take this one. And then he noticed that the owner, was actually in the driver's seat of the convertible. So he went, okay, that's not going to work. So we all were getting in the other car. And I said, just wait, I need to pick up those shells. So I went to the beach to pick up the shells. And as I was getting into the car, I saw a lady coming down the beach. And she was angry because she just spotted them and she wanted to take the shells. And she felt like, like she had a claim on them from having seen them. And I thought about it because I thought, oh, does she really? But in my heart, I knew that I had seen them first. Even though I didn't dig them out or anything and I had just seen them, I knew I'd seen them. So I got the shells and we drove away. And there's a bit more to the dream, but I don't know if it's significant, and I don't know how much time you have. So
Sure. How much more?
Just a little bit.
Go ahead.
So it's like another scene. We were all going to go down to the beach. My husband and my kids went ahead of me because I was going to change and then come down after them. So as I'm heading down to the beach, my kids are coming back, and now they're not early 20s. Now they're kind of like 7 and 9. And they said, it's too cold, but I let them go back to the vacation rental by themselves, which I wouldn't have done. And I kept going to the beach and I thought, okay, I'm going to swim. But when I get there, my husband's asleep in the water and I just swam for a while. And then the sun set and we thought, oh, it's time to leave. And we go to leave and I pick up this huge sheet, kind of like a big bed sheet, a big fabric sheet. I pull it off the water and then we head back.
You pull it off the water?
Yeah, like it was laying over the sea. And I pull it off as we're leaving, like as we're gathering our things and leaving.
This is a fascinating dream. I love this dream. This is awesome. So it's the idea that you're on vacation. You're going to this vacation rental. You end up on the beach. You see a shell inside of a shell inside of a shell, right?
Hmm.
And then you go away. I forget what you went away to. And then you went back to get the shell.
Just to see what my husband and son were doing, like getting a car for us to go back.
Right. Oh, that's what I was going to say. You got to teach your kids how to better steal cars. Just kidding.
That would be how my son would do it.
Don't
It's very
steal
big on
cars with drivers in them. No, but it was a blue car.
It was a blue car, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like God was the driver of that car. And blue represents revelation. And I believe this dream is God taking you on a revelation that he's about to give you.
Cool.
When you were talking about the beach, man, when you talked about the shell inside of a shell inside of a shell, I heard Daniel 2:22. And it's interesting because somebody just put 2:22 in the comments earlier. But it says he knows he reveals the deep and hidden things. Right? So if there's a shell, what's hidden in the shell is another shell, and what's hidden deep within the shell is something else, which is another shell. Mm-hmm. So it's like peeling back the layers. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. It's also the idea that the beach is a place of revelation and exposure, particularly revelation and usually illumination, because people go to the beach to get sun. Nobody's like, oh, hey, it's a rainy day, let's go to the beach. You know, everybody goes when the sun is shining, when it's warm outside. The ocean I was just down in Florida fishing, both on the Gulf Coast and on the Atlantic side. And I used to be, of course, in the Navy. I used to be a sailor, and going out to sea again and seeing just the deep, deep blue of the ocean when you're in 1,200 feet of water or whatever. I love that. But it's the idea of the deep blue. You know, the Bible says deep calls to deep, right? But it's particularly the idea of when things wash up on shore, they're things that came out of a depth of revelation that God has brought literally to our doorstep because we live on land, right? Mm-hmm. And has illuminated because they're in the sun. They've also been revealed and uncovered. Otherwise, they would be buried in the sand. And so the fact that you found a shell inside of a shell inside of a shell means that there's something that God wants to reveal to you at a depth of 2 or 3. So if you have something particularly, now obviously you were out on the beach looking for shells. You know, I love to go beach combing too, and you know, shark's tooth, shells, whatever. But looking for something beautiful, and you found just this rarity. I mean, never even heard of a shell inside of a shell inside of a shell, but it's just so cool that you found it. And I feel like what God is saying is there's something that you want to do or that you've been working on, which was the idea of going to the beach, going on vacation with your family, that in it, he's going to reveal a depth that you did not expect. And so what I hear is keep digging, keep looking inside and inside. And, you know, it could be a dream. It could be something that God is doing in your life. You get one layer of information and God is saying, no, look deeper. And then you find another, no, look deeper still. And then you find the wonder of the shell inside of a shell inside of a shell. The other thing that I hear is take it with you. Don't leave it behind. You know, because initially you left it behind and then you went and we had to go and we got the family and we're getting the car and blah, blah, blah. But then you went back for it, and then it was like somebody else was trying to steal the idea of this revelation, this thing that you had gotten that was so special to you. And you're like, no, I found it first. I want it. But then you had to contend for it. So there was literally not a war, but a level of contention. And so when God gives you a revelation, he literally bursts it out of the depths of the deep blue ocean, right? Deep revelation, puts it on the beach for you to find, knowing that you're going to be there. You find it, you treasure it, you see how special it is. You didn't take it with you. God is saying, take it with you. And if you don't, it's okay. But if you have to go back, there's a level of contention, of contending for the revelation, the deep within the deep within the deep that God gave me, that now I have to struggle to get back. You get it back anyway. And so the actionable intelligence on this is twofold. One, don't leave the revelation behind. When God shows you the depths of something, take it with you and own it. That's yours. You know, it's a gift. The second thing is, what was I going to say? Oh, if there is something that you've left behind, go back and contend for it. Go get it, because it's that special. So the idea of your kids, the dream has a timestamp on it, which is so cool. I love it when God does this. How old are your kids now?
22 and 20.
22 and 20. So in the dream, they were 7 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that happened when your kids were 7 and 9 that I feel like is something God wants you to go back and contend for. It's either something happened or something was revealed to you, and you can pray and he'll show you what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go back and get that particular, but that's a key piece, because often, well, sometimes often, sometimes not often, God will put a timestamp in a dream that it's not like, 1999, like it's not like plastered like a Prince song across, the front of the video or whatever. It's the idea that you have to figure it out, and, God will reveal it to you. But that was the whole idea of, my kids are in their 20s, suddenly they're 7 and 9 again. Like, how does that even play into the dream? It even seems insignificant. It's not, it's a very significant point, because God has things, and I feel like there's even something recently that he's given you that he wants you to keep hold of and own. But there was also something back behind that God says, you found that's still yours. Now go back and contend for it.
Okay. Thank you. That's awesome.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I've got good records, so I can go back and look at things, but I'll be praying too.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
if
And
you find
also
it,
thank you to Randy too.
Huh?
I was going to say, and thank you to Randy too for what he was part of in Virginia.
Oh yeah, he's a hero. I love that guy. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, John. I appreciate you too.
Bye. Wow, that is so cool. All right, Julie. I don't know if we've heard from you before.
Hi, John. Well, I was in your Sim 1 class.
Yeah. Okay.
So, so this dream I had a few months ago, and just to give a setup for it, childhood neighbors, the mother and one of their daughters and my mom and me would get together for meals and everything. And then this summer, that mom passed away. And shortly after she passed away, I had this dream. And in this dream, she sent the other three of us breast
The
milk.
mother or the daughter?
What's that?
Who said? You said she, the one that passed away?
Yeah, the one that died. So she's in heaven, right? So she's in heaven now. So I have this dream, and she sends us from heaven breast milk and handles. And I've been working through this one, so I kind of wanted to share it. And the handles were like cabinet door handles, okay? And she said that she's sending the handles so that we'll be able to handle the things that are to come. So then I was like, I have so many notes on this. I'll make it quick though. So I was thinking about the breast milk, and I was like, who in heaven can provide breast milk? And then I was thinking about breast milk being about nourishment and closeness, and that when a baby's breastfeeding, that distance from the mother's face to the baby's is like where the baby's eyes are most in focus at that age. And so I was just thinking that breast milk is from the Father, our heavenly parent. And in the Bible, there's a couple key verses that mean a lot to me about where he shares about him being like a mother, where he says, what mother can forget the child at her side? But I won't forget you. Your hands are etched on the palm, or you're etched on the palm of my hands. And then Jesus, when he said, like a mother hen gathering her chicks, is how he would want to. So and then I was reading this article that I'll get to again in a little bit, and it reminded me that El Shaddai means the many-breasted one, or at least that's the way it can somehow be interpreted. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, so this part really speaks to me about having the intimacy with the Father and having him in focus, and just at our time with him like that. And then, so then I was thinking of the Handles, and I thought of Handel's Messiah, and the Hallelujah chorus, and which is the big thing with that. And at the end, so I was looking up the words to that because I couldn't remember all the parts. And the part that really stood out to me was this: the kingdoms of this earth have become the kingdom of our Lord and King. And I believe that that's coming. Then I was thinking, okay, handles, the cupboard door handles. And I was like, well, handles on cupboard doors, those are used to open. We don't really hold them while we're closing it. They're used to open. And so I thought about the importance of opening, and then what are in the kitchen cupboards, whether there's things to prep for food, for meals. There's dishes and everything that to present those meals and everything. So I was thinking of the storehouses of heaven. So I thought, I'm going to Google verses on the storehouses of heaven. And the first thing in the list, John, you cannot believe this, was an article that says the storehouses in heaven are full. And it's this woman who writes about this. And in like a couple paragraphs in, she starts saying, I like to think of the storehouses of heaven like breastfeeding. I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
And first she's talking about supply, and she went a whole different direction kind of with the breastfeeding thing. But she was talking about supply and how the supply is really important. And the more a baby feeds, the more supply there is, and how God has total supply in heaven. And
Wow.
so, and then she went into it too with then applying it to her own life with tithing. And it's about that. And of course, I wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to ignore that tithing part. But so then I eventually got back to, sorry, I'm scrolling through this to kind of get through, to look up the verses about the storehouses. And one of the main ones is bring the full tithe into the storehouse and see that I won't open the floodgates of heaven. You know, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's something there to that. And
I was going to say,
anyway,
don't ignore tithing.
what's that?
I was going to say, don't ignore tithing.
Yeah, that's right. I know it's important, but I was just kind of like resistant because of like the what is it called, the prosperity gospel type thing. Is kind of what it, anyway, that just gets in my history in churches and stuff. But anyway, it is that, I don't know. Then I just got into, okay, what are the scriptures about opening? And they're like Jesus opening blind eyes and opening deaf ears. And I don't know, there are other things too. My notes are so long and I don't want to take up a lot of time. But anyway, I do feel like that's, again, what's coming. Like there are handles to handle what is to come. So there's provision, there's supply for us. But I also believe there's those miracles that are coming that are about opening. Yeah. So anyway, I hope that makes sense.
Wow, that's awesome. You did a great job.
I don't know if you had any other thoughts, but that was...
do, actually. The first thing I heard was love. The idea of love handles.
Oh, yeah.
But also the idea of, nothing says love probably like mother's milk,
Yeah.
And there's even a phrase that I forget what movie it's in, but they're like, they're, for them to say, oh, something is sweet and precious. They're like, oh, it's like mother's milk. It's just the idea of love of, obviously, I don't know what it's like, but you carried a baby, inside you for 9 months, and you've carried and nurtured it. And now it's birthed, it's outside, and you're still continuing to use literally the strength and energy of your body to lovingly hold that baby, to feed, to nurture. Like there's just a level of closeness and intimacy that if you're not a mother, you probably don't understand, And so the idea of that coming from heaven, I think is awesome, especially coupled with the idea of, like you said, I will open the floodgates. Now, floodgates are what's on a dam. On something that is literally held back from a massive amount of a liquid substance, right? Like water. And so to open the floodgates literally means a flow of liquid is going to gush forth. So I think it's fascinating that you found, related to storehouses, the idea, and even related to tithing, the idea of a liquid outpouring, which I think is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting that the land that the Jews entered, that was the promised land, was the land flowing with milk and honey.
Right.
And of course, as far as I remember or heard, breast milk is pretty sweet. So the idea of nourishment, love, milk and honey, the floodgates. But the other thing too is it takes me back to the verse, the key of David, Isaiah 22:22. Open a door that no man can shut, shut a door that no man can open. So it's the idea of handles they also signify access.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you ever try to get into a door that has no handle?
Right.
Frustrating. You're trying to, find something to grip onto to hold it open, and it's not supposed to be open that way. But it's the idea that having access is what that verse is all about. That's why it says, I will open a door that no man can shut. Why does it say no man? Because it means no man, no matter how strong, no matter what your stature, no matter what your level of position or muscularity or this or this or this prominence in life, you don't have access.
Mm-hmm.
Only you do. It's almost like you carry the handle with you, because once you open that door, you take the handle and nobody else can access that door. They can't shut it. And once you shut that door, it's like ripping the handle off and nobody can reopen that door.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally the idea of carrying a gift or a level or an anointing of access. That's what that means. And so the idea of handing out handles, I think, is fascinating. But the other thing, and this is something that you caught, was the whole idea of the Handel's Messiah, right? When is Handel's Messiah most thought about or played?
This time of year.
Christmas time, right? That's
Yeah.
a timestamp. So the thing I love is the idea of handles is about a quintuple entendre. We have the idea of love handles, we have the idea of access, we have the idea of hang on or hold on, handles Messiah, Isaiah 22:22. There's like 5 different things already, and this is the depth. This is why I love going into dreams. This again is also why we don't use dream dictionaries, because it might say just this one thing, and then you would stop looking and you wouldn't allow yourself to go deep into all the facets of what God is trying to communicate to you. And I think it's absolutely incredible and fascinating too that he used a friend of yours who has passed away as the one who would say, this is what I'm sending you from heaven.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a great job on the decode on that too. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Guys, I wanted to share something really, really quickly with you. We have a new announcement. We have a course that I just completed. I was on vacation in Florida, but I wanted to get it done. And so we got it all filmed. It's a new course called the Dreams Course. And the purpose of this course is to be able to teach you a level of proficiency to excel in dream interpretation. If you're in SIM, if you're not in SIM, if you're interested in dreams at all, we wanted to take something. We looked at all the feedback we got from our spiritual intelligence mentorship courses and what people wanted. One of the things they wanted is they wanted kind of one-on-one time. They wanted to be able to go at your own pace. And they wanted to know if the answers they got were right or not. And so here's how the course is laid out. We're going to give you a dream at the beginning of a class, and then you're going to fill out the entire Joseph Method dream report, where you say, and we teach the Joseph Method. If you're not familiar with the Joseph Method, guys, just ask me later or check out our website, dreamlifedecoded.com, because it's all over that. But it's the idea of using the method that Joseph used for Pharaoh. And we have the dream broken out into, here's the key symbols, you interpret the symbols, and then you take a shot at the conclusive summary and the actionable intelligence. And we got all of this ready. The course isn't available till January, but we got it ready now because people, man, if you're looking for a really cool Christmas present, we actually have a gift certificate that you can get, and you can purchase this dream interpretation course for yourself or a friend of yours. So I want to just show you just this real quick promo that we made for it, and I'll be right back.
Scientists say everyone dreams. Our brains are made for dreaming. God holds the keys to our dreams, and you can understand His messages. Access blueprints from heaven. Hear the whispers of the lover to his bride. It's time to master the skills. Access biblical decode instructions and unlock the secret love language of God to you.
Awesome. So excited about that. Excited what it's going to mean for all of you, and excited to see the growth that we have when we use that course. Okay. Moving along. KJ.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, good. Good to see your face.
Yeah, yours too, from Alaska.
Yep.
Good deal.
Yep. Yeah. So I have two dreams. So do you want the 22 dream, or do you want the Team 6 dream?
Ooh. Is it SEAL Team 6?
It's it's a short. So is a 22 dream.
Okay, do the 22 since we just talked about 22.
All right. So it was a dream that on the 11th, and you and I, it seemed like it was the East Coast, seemed like it was a bit of an emergency, and there were like townhomes like you see on the East Coast, the townhomes with the stairs going up, and then you go through the door. And you and I ran through the door, and you looked at me and I looked at you, and you said 22, and I said to you 22, and then I took my hand and I went, like, I looked at you and went like that, and that was the dream. And it was like New York, it was like, I haven't really spent a lot. I've been to Pennsylvania, but I haven't been back east a lot. But it was like those style, the townhomes. It's like they're all on a block, and you have steps. So that, that was the dream.
That's so cool. Wow. So, do you know where on the West Coast?
No, it was the East Coast. It seemed like the East Coast, and it seemed like New York. The style. It could be DC, New York, Boston, but the style of townhomes. They're like brick and they're all in a row. Then they have like 5 or 6 or 7 steps you run up to go into the building.
Yeah, brownstone houses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So we're on the East Coast. We were going up the stairs. Did you say we were running? We were like running away from something?
We weren't running away from something, but it seemed like we needed to get to something quickly, like it was an emergency. And so we went up through the door. We were inside. And that's when you looked at me. You said 22. I looked at you and said 22. And I took my right hand and went like that.
And the door open?
No, there was no door. I was like showing you, and I turned without saying any words. I went like this.
Wow.
And turned
Sounds
like
a prophetic act. Sounds like the idea of a prophetic act. It's interesting that, I said 22 and you said 22. It's like we knew instantly, the double 22.
Yeah.
God has been bringing that up in dreams. Like this is like the third dream that we've talked about, Isaiah 22:22. And in fact, I'm going to pull it up and read it. There's a couple of variations, not variations. There's a couple of different versions that I want to read it in just because I want us to get the fullest understanding. Since this is something on God's mind and he wants to talk about it, I want to lean in, right?
Mm-hmm.
He will be a father to those who live in Jerusalem and to the people of Judah, I will place on his shoulder
Shoulders.
the key to the house of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. I will drive him like a peg into a firm place, his seat of honor from the house of his father. All the glory of his family will hang on him, its offsprings and offshoots, all its lesser vessels and the bowls to all the jars. Wow, there's a level of depth in that. So that's NIV. Let me see what NASB says. Then I will set the key of the house of David on his shoulder. Of course, it talks about the government being upon his shoulders, right?
Yeah.
So the key of the house of David is really interesting because, of course, the promise that God made to David was that he would always have, that if he followed the Lord with all of his heart, he would never cease to have one of his members or one of his descendants on the throne, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he opens, when he opens, no one will shut. When he shuts, no one will open. It doesn't even say door. It just says when he opens, no one will shut. That's fascinating. One other version. Let me check out the NKJV, and then we'll do the Amplified. The key of the house of David I will lay on his shoulders, so he shall open and no one shall shut. He shall shut and no one will open. Okay, that's pretty similar. Let's do the amp.
Amp it up.
Amp it up. Then I will set on his shoulder the key of the house of David. When he opens, no one will shut. When he shuts, no one will open. Interesting. I always thought that verse, and in some versions it does have the word door, but in those last two it didn't have the word door. It just says when he opens, no one will shut. He shuts, no one will open. So the idea of us trading the double 22 back and forth, and then you just kind of, doing the prophetic act of like, I'm going to put the key in and turn it. I think it's a prophetic act, and I think it represents something that God wants turned, open, or shut on the East Coast. So it's interesting because it's location, right? Things you look for intelligence to be actionable, there needs to be like times, dates, locations. So this is locations. The East Coast. It's interesting when you talked about the brick buildings and the brick houses. It reminded me of Boston, and of course, Boston was the site of the Boston Massacre, Trenton and Concord. The whole entire start of the Revolutionary War happened in and around the suburbs of Boston. And then, of course, you have Bunker Hill, and there's just so much history related to the Revolutionary War that happens in the city of Boston. The Philadelphia Church reminds me of the North Church, which I think wasn't the North Church in Boston as well, which was Paul Revere's bride. There's so much related to our history that goes back to the East Coast, but I feel like what God is saying is there's some things that need to be shut and or open. So we were walking up stairs as if to go into a townhome, right? And were we still on the outside?
We ran. It was like it was a bit of an emergency, and we weren't scared or anything. We just ran up the stairs and went inside the door, and then that's when we had our dialogue. We went inside.
Went inside.
Went inside, yeah.
So it's interesting, because when you go through a door and you have the key of David, it would make sense that you would be shutting something, especially if you felt like it was an emergency. You either had to get away or had to get to something. It would be the idea of shutting the door behind you or locking the door behind you so no one else has access to the place that you are in. Does that make sense? Does that resonate with you?
It makes sense. Yeah. But you looked at me and you said 22, and I said 22, and then I went like this. So
it's cool because it's like, it reminds me of, the nuclear protocol, and if you're in the missile silos and it has two nuclear officers and you both have to turn the key at the same time, and you kind of got to, 3, 2, 1, turn.
Oh, wow.
No one person can do it on their own, and
that's so good. I like that. That's so good.
Yeah, and the idea of nuclear, that's literally opening a door, and it's like a cargo bay door. It's a missile silo door, and nobody's going to shut that door. Like once that sucker opens, ain't nobody shutting it.
Mhm.
You know, and so the idea of the ramifications of, you know, it's an act of war. If you're like in a situation where you're next to a Russian sub, just to open the torpedo doors or to open the missile doors is considered an act of war because it's an act of aggression. Because of course
Wow.
they know what happens next. So the idea of opening a door can also be the idea of literally opening war. It can be a declaration of open warfare.
Mhm.
You know, so I think it's fascinating that you're talking about the East Coast. God's reminding me of the Revolutionary War, and then we throw the whole nuclear thing into the mix. It's the idea of literally devastation on an enemy that's about to be unleashed that can't be stopped, and that is just beyond any type of conventional warfare. And I feel
Yeah, sorry, John, keep
No,
talking.
go ahead.
I had a sense that like we had to turn the key.
Mhm.
Like we had to turn the key.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Super interesting.
yeah.
You know, as I was doing this, working on this abortion dream last night, actually. Are you fading out?
I hope not.
Oh,
I'm far away.
I felt like God gave a strategy and a strategy for how to win this case in the Supreme Court. And it's like
Wow.
to the point that it makes me want to look up the attorneys and get in touch with them because it's that much of a download. And I'll
Wow.
share it briefly. I won't go into the whole decode, but it's the idea of, you know, I've studied pretty extensively both George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, but probably more so Abraham Lincoln because he showed up in a couple of dreams. And so I did some really deep dives on, you know, 15, 20 hours of documentaries and stuff that, you know, in a 35, 40-hour book. Can you still hear me?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. I'll look like I faded out for a minute. But, you know, when he debated Douglas, the Lincoln-Douglas debates are fascinating because it was all about the question of slavery. And what he did is clearly, if you read the Constitution, you know, was crafted in such a way that slavery was really allowed. It was kind of winked at, you know. So looking at the Constitution, which is why they needed a constitutional amendment, arguing the Constitution, you couldn't win the argument on slavery. And so what he did is he went back to the Declaration of Independence,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
is the document that really was a declaration of war itself on, you know, the oppressors of England, or, you know, the king in particular. But he said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You know, one of the crux of the abortion argument is, when does life begin? I don't care when life begins. When does creation begin? Is a fetus not created? You can't win that argument. A fetus is a created, whatever you want to call it a thing, call it a substance. If it has a heartbeat, it's been created. There's no question it's created. All men are created equal, and they are endowed by their creator with certain of the first one of which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Good,
Life,
John.
it's the very first thing. Like, this is what we fought the Revolutionary War over. So it's interesting that I went back to, you know, Paul Revere and Boston and all these things, because that's what Lincoln did, is he couldn't win the justification of outlawing slavery on the basis of the U.S. Constitution. And so he went back. He even does it in Gettysburg. He goes in the Gettysburg Address, he goes all the way back to the Declaration of Independence and say, yeah, this is the law of the land, the U.S. Constitution, but we wouldn't have a land if we didn't have this founding document, which in his mind superseded even the importance of the U.S. Constitution. And I think if they argued the case in that way, it totally defeats the, quote, scientific argument of when does life begin.
Wow.
The pursuit of life. Who
Yeah.
needs to pursue life unless somebody who isn't fully formed yet and can't survive on their own? Like, are you kidding me? They're a created being. They want to pursue the inalienable right of the pursuit of life. They want to be fully alive. They want to be self-sustaining. They want to be birthed outside the body and able to live a life like everybody else can. Like, this is an argument, I think, that would blow massive truck-wide holes into what people are arguing related to the abortion issue, and in particular, the nonsensical argument back and forth of, well, when does life begin, and when does, you find a organism, you find a one cell organism on Mars, and now suddenly there's life, and we have a human heartbeat, and we're going to deny that it's life or its existence. Well, good. Let's go back to creation. When does creation begin? So anyway, I just feel like there's something that is happening, and we can feel it in the dreams that are being discussed tonight, and the things that God's put on the heart of people to bring this kind of the forefront and say he's worried, he's concerned. He's not worried. He's concerned about this issue, and he's concerned about 50 years of death in America that's been mandated by people who are supposed leaders and who follow the Constitution, which was based initially on the Ten Commandments, on the law of Moses. That's where we got our legal precedents for the U.S. Constitution. And the Founding Fathers looked heavily into a biblical basis and a moral basis to have the authority to declare the law of the land. So I think the idea of, look, we're already inside, but there's an emergency, which means there's something happening right now that needs to be addressed. What's happening right now is the argument in the Supreme Court related to this issue.
Yeah. So we pray that you'll be able to touch base and have the language you need and touch base with the people that you need to connect with.
Yeah, amen. Or God will just give it to them supernaturally. It doesn't have to be me, but I just think this is a massive, massive key, literally a key that could turn a door that supersedes the arguments of the past and places that we've lost before. So it's interesting that Randy's dream too was talking about that as well, of running, being pursued. They were in a car, but it was the idea of, we got to get somewhere in a hurry. There's a massive sense of urgency as what's happening with, and I know the intercessors are feeling it too. When Lou and Matt shared this dream, Matt Lockett is the founder, I believe the founder of the Justice House of Prayer, which is right across from the Supreme Court. He's been praying for 17 years to end abortion. Of course, everybody knows who Lou Engle is. And both of those guys are dream guys, massive dream guys. So the fact that they were sharing this dream was absolutely fascinating with what I believe God is saying and wants to release right now. That dream, by the way, the reason I decoded it is because it's one of the dreams I use as an example in our new dream course. I wanted to pull something literally current and put it in there.
Are you talking about the one and they heard Burl Ives?
Yes.
Because Burl Ives was Frosty the Snowman, and and he had to be saved.
Burl Ives has a song called Old Witch, Old Witch. And there was a witch. Burl Ives has a song called Old Witch, Old Witch. And there was a witch in the dream trying to kill the baby. He has 3 songs that talk about mountains, and they went up to a shack on the mountain. They went to the carpenter's shack. He has a song called The Carpenter. Like literally, like the lyrics that he has on the songs that he has, like coincide with the symbols in a dream. It's ridiculous how much they coincide.
Wow.
Mind blowing. Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
That's so good. So
that's so fun.
We'll pray. So Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas, KJ. Thanks for sharing your dream with us.
Thank you. Love you guys.
All right, love you. Take care.
Bye.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Good stuff. All right, Susan.
Yay, I'm so excited. I hope you can hear me.
How you doing?
Sorry, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good.
God is uber chatty with me, so I was really excited to have short stuff to share so I could finally hopefully get some information and major tech issues tonight, and I got back in. So anyway, I'll make it quick before my battery dies. So I had 3 images. I had a dream where all I remember from the dream is seeing really beautiful black wavy hair, supposedly of a friend's daughter, and I heard "Be a Ruth" and woke up. Be a Ruth. And I thought of Ruth from the book of Ruth. And
be a Ruth.
Ruth. Yeah,
Ruth.
R-U-T-H.
I was like, what the dog says? Roof, roof.
No.
Be a Ruth. Okay.
Yes, be a Ruth. And then I was awake, not immediately after this dream, but I was awake with my eyes closed, and I saw a very clear vision of a bright white 2-story house off in the distance. And here's my interpretive artwork. The blackness in my eyes created these rocky kind of obstructions on the side of the house. And then very quickly, it was like black clouds rolled over first the right side of the house and then the left, completely obscuring it, and the house was gone.
Wow.
And it was a very nice looking house, not like my drawing, but it looked like a very high-end white house, but very far away. But that was while I was awake, but with my eyes closed. And then I did fall asleep, and this was the very last dream I had before getting up for the day. And all I saw was this. I saw, sorry, it's super, reverse it. It's a 5-point connect the dots with multiple pen lines in between each dot. And all I could think of before I actually woke up and drew it, was the 5-fold ministry connecting, but that's it. That's all I've got.
So show me the pictures again.
All right, they are reversed, but that might be good because reversed, my connect the dots actually does look kind of like a 5. So this was the house. I could see it off in the very far distance. My eyes were closed. I was awake. I knew I was awake. And this, just the blackness of when your eyes were closed at night, created these rocky outcroppings kind of partially obscuring the house in the front and the side. And then a big black cloud came in from the left, the right, and then the left. It was just like as if the blackness in my eyes were covering the house from view, and it was gone. And then later on in the night, while I was actually dreaming, I saw the 5-point connect the dots. And that was it.
So it was just those 2 dreams.
It was 3. It was a dream with the hair and hearing a man say,
Ruth.
be a Ruth.
Be
And I woke up. And then there was this vision while I had my eyes closed but was awake of the house. And then later on I fell asleep, and then I had the connect the dots image.
Wow.
So I don't know if they have anything to do with each other, but yesterday was a really awesome day spiritually for me. And I was up a lot of the night praying with the Lord and just got my prayer language. So there's all sorts of, I'm like a spaz for God right now. So.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you.
So what does be a Ruth mean to you?
Just the dedication. I will admit I don't have a ton of, my biblical knowledge is not perfect. So it was that dedicated daughter, even a daughter-in-law. And am I getting my stories wrong? I should have looked them up. I had enough time tonight to look it up.
No, you're doing great.
But that's what I thought. And I'm all hot. Yeah, and that's all I have so far. Haven't done a lot of work on it. It's been kind of a crazy 48 hours, 24 hours.
Yeah. So the idea of the house being, do you know what color the house was?
White. It was bright white. The rooftop was a brownish, but otherwise it was just a big white house.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was feeling. So the idea of the dark rocks kind of encroaching in on on the house itself and obscuring the view, right? Is the idea of something that's hard to remove, but is not necessarily permanent. It wants to be part of a foundation, but it's not. It's just like rock, right? Black rock. That's interesting. I know a guy that used to be the vice chairman of Black Rock. He collapsed inside that building. It's interesting building.
Darn, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it was just for some reason, my speaker's deciding, again, tech issues.
No, I think I cut out for a minute.
Okay.
Back. So, yeah, it seems like weird stuff's happening on the technical side tonight. but okay. The five pointed thing, what I saw is a greater than or equal to sign.
Ah, I use that all the time. Okay. I'm looking at it. It's like I do use that a lot. A lot of my.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I said I cut out for a minute, but I guess I'm back.
It's probably because my iPad is losing battery and it's just being.
I think it might be on my end, but yeah, the idea of a Ruth took a risk. Like Ruth laid down, right, and wanted Boaz to extend his covering over her, which is basically the idea of, dropping the hanky, as some would say, or saying, hey, I'm interested in you. For a woman to approach a man to do that can certainly be a risk, but I can tell you that men appreciate that sometimes when it happens. Because if you think of it from the man's point of view, this is a very wealthy landowner, elder in the community, somebody that people look up to. He can't be going out and hitting on all the girls that are trying to glean in his field. Like, it's got to be like, there needs to be a level of professionalism, and so it's just an interesting story that she made her intentions known. And it's a biblical story. I know culturally, there's a lot to be said for a guy making the first move and all that. I totally understand that. But this story is a story particularly about redemption, as the idea of a kinsman redeemer. I'm not here to teach on Ruth tonight, but if you don't know the story, look up the story, because there's so much redemption. First, there's so much loss. And then there's a commitment.
Hold on. Sorry, one moment.
Okay.
Stop. Sorry, I can't
That's
plug
okay.
in my headphones, and my daughter's just decided to play with tinfoil to finish something. So awesome. Thank you.
It's interesting about the idea of Ruth is there's so much loss, and then there's a decision made to take her down a path of loyalty that is not going to redeem her from her loss. Because she doesn't have, Naomi doesn't have more sons. It's like, what do you, even if I birth somebody, what are you going to wait till he grows up to, like, it's just an unworkable solution. And so she chose that path. I will go with where you go, I go. Your people will be my people, and my God will be your God. So it's the idea of extreme loyalty after an extreme amount of loss that is not about her, that puts her whole idea of her life kind of on hold. It really subservients her idea of her independence to the importance of being a part of the relationship with Naomi, and saying, I'm going to stick with you, and it's in that place of her sticking with and being loyal that the kinsman redeemer appears. And then she makes a move and says, hey, I want to be redeemed in this setting. And so will you spread your covering over me? And then, which Ruth can mean covering. It's funny because I kept hearing you say roof, and I'm like, well, that's and I was just hearing covering, and covering works for the story of Ruth too, because it's the guy making the decision to cover the woman who has, taken the bold step of letting her desires or her wishes be made known. The house is interesting because I think it represents a time of strongholds. That's what rocks are. They're like strongholds. They're like things moving. I particularly see of, the old, like, Lord of the Rings type of old times where they would attack the city walls, and they would do it, right, where they do it with catapults and rocks, so the idea of there's a bunch of rocks that have landed, like they're encroaching upon the front of the White House, I think is really interesting, because there's been attacks that haven't, I don't know if they haven't been returned or whatever. It just seems like the defenses haven't been what they should be. Like, if somebody, again, God forbid, somebody attacks the White House, like, we're going to war. Like, it's not going to be like, no, don't do that again. I mean, it's all out. So if somebody's lobbing huge style rocks into the front lawn of the White House, obscuring the view of the White House, it's a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the rocks coming in represent a physical component of a stronghold or a strong man spirit. And the idea of the clouds coming in represent how I believe the presence of the rocks, because the rocks are what came first, then the clouds, they prepare a spiritual atmosphere of which they can change light to dark. You know, so I think that's fascinating. What was the third part?
The third part was when I was actually back asleep again. It was the connect the dots, the 5-point connect the dots.
Greater than or equal to.
Greater than or equal to, and whoops. And it was like multiple pen lines between every connection, as if somebody had done it multiple times.
So, and I just hear, of course, you know, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. It's like the ultimate greater than sign. It's not even a greater than or equal to, it's just a greater than. But the equal can also be your part. You know, greater than or equal to, it's the idea of equality. It's the idea of, you know, a civil liberty that people have fought and died for, the idea of equality. I don't mean it like people mean it, particularly related to the feminist movement. But I understand that there was a fight for equality there. I don't want to get into the politics of that. What I want to talk about is the idea of greater than or equal to. So God is what's greater than everything that we deal with. The equal to is the idea that I believe the idea is it's a combination of God working in conjunction with us, because greater is he that it is in me than he that is in the world, then I am equal to the task or the challenge in front of me.
That's awesome. Yeah, we had a prayer gathering last night. It was all about partnering with God and walking in our authority and the authority we have through Jesus, and being strong warriors and going straight into battle. So it was awesome. That's awesome.
So cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that,
Yeah,
Susan.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So, gosh, guys, I know we got a lot of people waiting. We have a special group here. This is family dream night for the Vincents. We have Jim and his wife Sue on separate lines here. So I guess we'll go ladies first on this one.
Yes. All right.
Family dream night. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Okay, I'm going to get right to it. So this one I just had actually today, because it was after midnight. Okay. I'm at a large social gathering. It takes place in a house and in the yard, because there's that many people. The only people I know are my pastor, his name is John, and his adult son, Lyle. The situation is that the son's fiance breaks up with him, although in real life he's actually married. The next thing I know, I'm engaged to the son. So I'm engaged to Lyle, but I'm uneasy about it. The rest of the dream, I'm trying to signal to my pastor that I need to speak with him alone, and I'm trying to look for a place to, where there's no people. And there is one guy that kind of keeps following us, and he's just trying to be social, though. He doesn't realize that I want to talk to the pastor by himself. So I finally find a spot, and I say to my pastor, my concern is, what if Lyle isn't over Jenna? Jenna's the fiance. How can he want to be engaged so fast? And my pastor responds, well, they've only been engaged for 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, but they've been dating for several years. And that's it. I wake up.
So what do you get?
And Lyle's like 30. So
Lyle's 30.
Yeah.
Good old Lyle. Engaged or married, Lyle. Engaged to you. How does Jim feel about that? Should we ask him?
I didn't ask him, but yeah. So I mean, like, we have a 28-year-old. So yeah, he's a little bit, would be too young for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you get out of it?
Well, honestly, the only thing I got, because I didn't have a lot of time to spend on it, was the engaged part. What came to my mind was in one accord. But I mean, the bizarre thing is that both my pastor and his son would not be, we're not on the same page with things that are going on in the world today. So I don't feel like we would be in one accord at all. So I don't know why I got that.
So it was your pastor is John and Lyle is his son.
Yeah.
Okay. So that probably where, if there's even a level of literalness to this dream, it probably ends, because obviously you're married, Lyle's married, they're not breaking up, they're not, the whole idea of the 6-month engagement, all of that is obviously a level of symbology.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it when God provides a break from reality, like when we have a dream about a deceased loved one, because we know it's clearly not that, well, God wants me to speak to my deceased loved one. No, that's clearly not the case. But clearly the case is that they represent something else, and we know that this is not a literal dream. So this is obviously not a literal dream. So then the question is, how far does the figurative or the symbology go? Are the names important? Are they important because of a meaning? Do the names represent something, or is it talking? It's funny because when people have a dream about, like me, they always think the dream is about me, but it could actually be about them, and I just represent, a leader, a mentor, a dream interpreter, whatever, just some guy in their life that they know somehow. So a pastor is a position of spiritual authority, right? It's somebody that you look up to, or you tend to look up to. A lot of people would consider, depending on the age and the relationship, a pastor kind of being almost like a father-like figure. And it's interesting that in the dream, he was going to be taking on the role of being a father-in-law. So the idea of being an in-law represents an idea of legalism, right? So it could be from a pastor who is a religious leader, hopefully also a spiritual leader. It could, now again, I don't believe that this necessarily represents your pastor, but just hear what I'm saying. This is not a, this is the idea of a religious leader and something that they've birthed, wanting to inappropriately partner with you. You're already previously spoken for. They're already previously spoken for. Something happened on their end where they're not actually spoken for. They're now just engaged. They've been engaged. They've been together for several years, engaged for 6 months. But now it's the idea, because that fell apart, I'm going to come over here and partner with you. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm not really feeling it. And you're trying to get in touch with the pastor, which is the guy who is the father, covering, protection, spiritual authority over that situation, because you don't want to be tied to it legally. You don't want to legally be bound to the idea of a marriage with your pastor's son. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what really rang true was a little bit of the legalism, actually. Okay.
And you can share more, or you don't have to, depending on what you're feeling. We don't.
Yeah.
I don't have to know the whole story.
Right.
I'm just glad it resonates with you.
Yeah. I'll have to think about it some more, but yeah.
So my thought is the actionable intelligence. Now, again, for those of you who are new to Dream Interpret or new to Friday Night Lives, what we do is we do a 5-step process called the Joseph Method, which is start with humility, identify the key symbols, interpret the key symbols, put together a conclusive summary, which we just did, and then provide actionable intelligence, which is what Joseph did in the Bible. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. Now here's what you should do. Here's what Pharaoh should do. So I want to tell Sue, here's what you should do. Because the idea that, there's something, on the legalism, religious side that wants to partner with me in a weird way, and I'm not really. So in the dream, you're trying to get your pastor's attention and talk to your pastor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's your pastor. The pastor in the dream is the source of legalism.
Mm-hmm.
And what he birthed, wanting to partner with you, creates a legal tie and bind to him. He becomes your father-in-law. And so there's this distraction of somebody in front of you that, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to do this and that. And yet they're trying to tie you to a situation of legalism. And what you really need to do is to go to that source, whatever's birthed that thing that wants to be tied to you, creating the legalistic. And by legalistic, I feel like it's a religious spirit as well, because it's represented by a pastor, not by a father, not by a politician, not by a leader. It's specifically a religious spirit that is wanting to partner with you, and you want to go back to whatever birthed that thing and say, look, I'm not going to have this. I don't want this legal bind. I'm not going to put up with the religious spirit, and I'm not going to put up with the legalism, because and initially you're kind of being nice. Well, do you think he's really over what was over there before? It's like, you don't want to marry the guy anyway. Like, dude, I don't want to be, but you're like, well, maybe he's not over her yet. Like and I feel like that's the other part of the actionable intelligence is be direct. Like set clear boundaries, like state, look, I don't want this to happen because I don't want to be married to your son, and I don't want the legal tie with you. So that's where I'm at. I forget whatever the 6-month thing with him and his ex-girlfriend, and who needs to know all that information anyway. So I feel like it's the idea of radically throwing off the bondage of legalism and the religious spirit that would try to partner with you, particularly in this season, and say, not having it, not now. Again, doesn't necessarily relate to your current pastor. It could relate to something that's happening in the church, because especially if your pastor founded the church or had to do with something in the church, talking to the son, it probably isn't going to get it done. So you might have to go to him and say, look, you're the father, you're spiritually responsible. I'm not going to partner with this, and I need it to go away. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And because some of us have been trying to get our pastor's attention for the past 21 months. So, yeah. Okay.
So be bold and be clear and state your case.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
You got it, Sue. Take care.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. All right. Where's the other Vincent? I see him. There he is. Boom. Jim, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, John. I'm glad to hear that we were taking a break from reality.
Glad my wife is not marrying the pastor's married son.
And as long as it didn't get salacious, so we're good. Okay, here's my dream.
Okay.
Very short. My neighbor Victor and I were in a garage, and I was either wearing or contemplating wearing or asking about an N95 mask. And Victor said something, which I don't remember, and he used the word debronation in relation to the mask. And I said, I'm not familiar with the word debronation. And I don't recall his explanation, but I understood there wasn't anything to worry about. That's it.
You need the explanation of the debronation, huh?
He did. So naturally, I looked up debronation. It's not a word, but I thought of a few key words here. But I'd like to
let's hear it.
Pardon me?
Go ahead. Let's hear what you got.
Well, obviously, I'm just picking out the key words, but one key word is Victor, and especially when I looked up, I couldn't remember where Deborah in the Bible was. It's in Judges chapters 4 and 5, and obviously Israel is the nation, is Deborah's nation. So the story of that might tie into this. Mask is a key word. And Victor, he happens to be a woodworker. He makes, as a hobby, he makes furniture. And so he would be speaking with authority when it comes to masks.
A carpenter.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's not his job, but he's a good woodworker.
Cool. So you were at your buddy Victor's house and he found the N95. Is that what it was?
We could have been in his workroom, but the setting looked like it was a garage, and it did look like we were going to do some type of work.
Okay. Interesting. Wow, this stream is incredible. So debronation, obviously, if you know or you've read the story of Deborah in the Bible relating to her being a judge, and leading people, leading in particular, I believe, an army, right?
Yep.
To lead the army to victory.
Yep. Yeah, that's where Victor comes in.
Yeah. That's where Victor comes in for sure. You know, it's interesting because I hear several things. If you break down the word debronation, you can get de-bra-nation, which to me reminds me of the feminist movement. You know, back in the day when they would just rip off the bras and, you know, we're not going to do this anymore and blah, blah, blah. So it's the idea of a feminist movement. So it's like a double entendre. It's a play on words.
Okay.
But debronation, I feel like, is the godly counterpart to the de-bra-nation, which was the idea of the feminist movement in the United States. And the feminist movement, you know, if this is the first time you've heard this, I apologize. Well, I really don't. I retract my apology. The feminist movement didn't do women any favors. Like the feminist movement, if anything, probably was an attack on and destroyed femininity, particularly in the United States, but also around the world. It destroyed the place of motherhood. It worked to destroy a lot of things related to gender roles. I'm not saying anything about the idea of women being equal, because I think women should be, you know, equal pay for equal work, things like that. Even women's suffrage, women voting, all of those things I believe in. But the idea of where it went, and I think particularly of the Women's March in 2016, and the people that got up and declared death on the president and wore weird hats and all of these things, I think it's just an absolute perversion of wanting to throw off the godly level of both authority and responsibility that women can and should walk in. You know, so the idea of women being somebody that can come in and save the day and can be a part of literally changing history, can be like a Joan of Arc, can lead armies to battle and be victorious, is a precedent that we've seen throughout history. And it's also, and I love the fact that it's also a biblical precedence. The idea that we've seen, and I've shared this from the first beginning moments of talking about spiritual intelligence 5 years ago. I was with an incredible woman who I have a great amount of respect for, who works in the prophetic, when we first had what we call the central question, where we said, if we believe that God can really, really speak to us in dreams and visions and prophecies, word of wisdom, word of knowledge, why isn't there a full-time agency helping to keep America safe or advising the president of the United States, which is where the idea, the modern inception of the spiritual intelligence movement, as I know it and as I refer to it, was born. From the get-go, that same person has other friends. Another woman who's an amazing prophetic lady who had a dream about what we call the empty warehouse, or we call the secret meeting dream. And in that dream, there was a table of prophetic dreamers that was a counterpart to traditional intelligence agencies. And the table was led by a woman, and there were 8 people at the table, 5 of which were women and 3 of which were men. And so on the basis, I've said from the get-go that I believe that God has a special calling in particular, not to exclude men, but also in particular for women, and even that women will lead in a large sense the new spiritual intelligence movement. So when you're talking about victory and debronation, I hear that, and this is what I believe. First of all, I believe that we are in an active state of war in America, and it's a spiritual war. It's literally good versus evil, you know. And it's not a cute little phrase. Oh, it's not Republican or Democrat. It's good versus evil. Like, if people really understood, people are just beginning to wake up to the idea of what's really been going on, because there's been deception and a massive, and that's part of spiritual warfare. Well, in order to win a spiritual war, you need spiritual intel. You know, in fact, it's probably next to impossible, if not impossible, to win a spiritual war without spiritual intelligence. And if you look at things like spiritual wars that were fought in the Bible, like the Battle of Jericho, it was the spiritual intelligence of what to do, the modus operandi, the strategy, and the tactics of how to defeat the enemy was brought in because of an angel of the Lord appeared, or the word came from the prophet. Even if you look at the battle against Moab, when they were in the desert, and they needed water or they were going to die, they sought the prophet, and the prophet said, dig trenches. And when the water came through, they had enough for their horses and everything, and for their troops. But spiritual intelligence is all throughout the Bible. So I feel like Deborah nation is the idea of creating. It's interesting. A lot of people are hearing things like divination, degradation. And I'm going to get to the mass part in a second. But the idea of the word Deborah nation in particular, like that word, not what it sounds like, but that word in particular, is the idea of a movement or a nation of female warriors who are victorious, women that can lead armies and win on behalf of a country and save and also judge a nation. One of the biggest areas of spiritual warfare, which again God has brought up multiple times tonight, is the issue of abortion. And the enemies of women and the enemies of children constantly point out how that is a women's issue. Well, I agree. It is a women's issue. It is an issue for the modern day Deborahs to win in this hour. That God is raising up a generation of female warrior princesses and queens. We're going to go, you can be 90 years old. It doesn't matter how, you don't have to be a sword carrying 20-year-old. You don't have to be Joan of Arc. You can be a Joan of Arc in the spirit. Like we have, part of our group, part of our spiritual intelligence mentorship, we have 86-year-old grandmas, great grandmas that are prayer warriors, and God is speaking on behalf of what's going on in the country and talking to them over and over and over again. And these are the kind of people that I'm talking about, literally the Wonder Womans, a nation of Deborahs that are victorious. But I believe part of what the dream is also saying. Tell me the part about the mask again.
I don't think I was wearing one, but I was contemplating wearing one or asking about it. Again, I can't remember the conversation that I had with him, but that the word was crystal clear. I repeated it back in the dream.
So the word was,
and so the word was Deborah nation, and it was he used it in relation to the mask, and that there wasn't a need to worry. That's the feeling I got. Like, don't worry about the fact that this, I don't know if, again, I don't know how he used the word Deborah nation, but it was in relation to the mask.
Okay. Interesting.
And I did mention it was an N95 mask, right?
So I hear N95 as related to N being the first letter of a book of the Bible. So Nehemiah 9 verse 5 says, then the Levites, Jeshua, Kadmiel, Bani, Hashabaniah, Sherebiah, Hobiah, Shabaniah, Pethiah said, stand up and bless, praise and honor the Lord your God from everlasting to everlasting. May your glorious name be blessed and exalted above all blessing and praise. Stand up and bless. What does that remind you of? To me, it reminds me of the Battle of Jericho. Again, Judah, the tribe of Judah, which were the worshipers, they went out first. It's a method of warfare. I believe the M95 is God is literally unmasking the fact that he has a key role for women in the victory of the spiritual war for America and what is coming and is already upon this country. As they said in Lord of the Rings, open war is upon you, whether you would have it or not. And I believe that the more women that are involved in fighting this, in decoding, it's a fascinating study if you spend any time looking at the role of women, particularly as decoders in intelligence operations. Just go back and look at World War II. Look at the mathematicians of NASA. There's movies been made about this stuff. But look at the women that spent time decoding the intelligence memorandum that would come through from the enemy. and how vital they were from an intelligence capacity in winning the war, even though they weren't particularly combat troops back in that era. But again, without actionable intelligence, boots on the ground type intel, it's very, very difficult to fight an enemy. So the idea of unmasking what's about to happen with a debronation, it's the idea of praise going forward, it's the idea of strategy and tactics, because the whole idea of praise and worship was a tactic that was part of a strategy. The strategy was how many times they marched around, but the idea that the praisers and the worshipers went first, that was a tactic. The strategy and tactics of how to defeat the enemy, and in particular, fascinating again, because the last dream, or the 2 dreams ago that we talked about, was the big rocks in front of the White House, right? So the idea of walking around Jericho was a stone wall that was so big, I think they could race like 5 chariots side by side across the top of it. It was massive, massive stone walls, and there's no way they could have got through. And so what happened is God sent the angels, and he basically ambushed them because of praise, because of the 7 days and the 7 times on the 7th day. And so I believe this dream is 2 things. 1, it's a call to women, and 2, it's an encouragement to women. And I believe it's no accident that you have an incredible wife who is also into dreams, who we just heard from. But it's the idea of, it's also interesting in relation to your wife's dream too, how a religious and a legalistic spirit wants to tie up and bind the women, literally, right, to be married to be bound to, so that they don't become the women that God created them to be, and they're not free to be the victors and to become the nation of female warriors that we need in order to win the battles of good versus evil that's being fought in this country right now. So it's encouragement for those women to be unmasked. In other words, if you have a mask on, it obscures identity, right? Especially in M95, it's not a paper mask, right? It covers the whole face, right? You pull that off, your identity is revealed. I hear the verse, the earth groans for the sons and daughters of God to be revealed, right? So, yes, Louise, my name also means female warrior. Like, there's so many women that are even responding to this discussion, but it's the whole idea that God is calling up women, right? It muzzles your voice too. Absolutely. It muzzles the voice. It takes away the idea of declaration. KJ's dream, right? We said 22, she said 22, and then she did the prophetic act of boom, opening. I will open a door that no man can shut the door, like the key of David, resting upon shoulders. The idea of governmental authority that women have when they open their mouth. It's all of these things put together. It's Isaiah 22:22 coupled with Jericho. Like, if they didn't praise, if they didn't open their mouth, if they didn't make noise, the angels wouldn't have been released, according to the tactics that were given by God, and the ambush wouldn't have been set, and they may not have taken Jericho at all. So it's interesting, because the role of worshipers wasn't necessarily a role that a man has of taking a sword and running up against a wall or hopping a fence. It was the idea of playing the flute, of singing, of definitely something that women as worshipers were involved with, But it's the idea of literally declaration, declaring actionable intelligence, spiritual intelligence related to strategy and tactics that brings down the wall, that tears away the rock structure that's trying to build a hedge, an evil hedge around even things like the White House, that literally shifts the spiritual authorities, the idea of the strong man, the stronghold, and breaking that up entirely.
And going back to the story of Deborah in the Bible, because Barak wanted Deborah to go with him, she said that the Lord was going to make a woman, she was going to give the victory to a woman. And so, if you recall, I think her name was pronounced Jael, who drove a stake through the head, of the king of the other, the bad, I don't know what country, but the victory went to a woman.
Amen. Wow. I love it. So that's a powerful dream.
All right.
That's cool. Thanks for
Nothing
sharing.
No action for me though, right?
support your wife. Support the women in your life. I just feel like, and as men,
And the wife says, "Woohoo!"
His wife says, one of the things that we do as men is, as much as we're given a position of authority, is to honor women, to support women, to even call women higher to a place of both spiritual authority and leadership. And unfortunately, there's so many people in the body of Christ that have not done this well. There's so many men that have limited the role of women in every aspect of leadership in ministry, and it's appalling to me, frankly, that some people just don't get this. But it's a new day, and God is raising up a new prophetic movement, and it's a new time of warfare, and we need all hands on deck. But not only all hands, we need women in particular. Even I understand that they've been bound with, just like in Sue's dream, right? They've been bound with legalism. They've been bound with a religious spirit. They've been tied to a situation that they didn't want to be tied to. And it's time to set them free and let them be the godly warriors that God's called them to be. Perhaps they're the very salvation of our nation, as it was in Deborah's time.
Amen to everything.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you guys sharing your dreams tonight.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Wow. So good. Let's do Courtney.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I knew I had to get on this broadcast because a year ago tonight, I had a dream encounter with the Father, and it took me from being lukewarm to like on fire. But I had a dream last week, and I knew as soon as I had it, it had to be interpreted.
Okay.
So, I started off, I was walking down a hall, it looked like a high school, and I was with my grandmother.
It looked like what?
But I knew, I'm sorry?
It looked like what?
It looked like I was in a high school, but
okay.
I knew that I wasn't. I knew I was leaving the sanctuary of a church and going to like a fellowship lounge. And even though it was my grandmother, I don't feel like that was her role in the dream. I felt like she was another church member. And what was really weird was I was with two vampires with us. They both looked like old school, like Hollywood, like the Munsters, like the slick back hair, pendant. I kept getting this word generational. And so they looked like they were the same age, but like one looked, say, he was like from the 50s. And then the other one looked like he was from like the 60s. So they were very close, but just like a generation, like an era difference. And we were marching down to go to the bathroom, and the one that was like the older generation, I just say generation just because that's the word that kept sticking out, was holding a stake. And I knew he was going to stick it in his own heart. And that when he did, the younger one was going to take his position. But I didn't know what the position was. And I was just so confused as to why these vampires, I didn't feel like they were harmful, but it was just so strange to me that they would be in church. So we get to the bathroom, and I decide I'm not going in. I know it's not scary. I know it's not going to be gory. I know he's not really going to die, but I knew I didn't want to watch it because I wasn't sure what I was going to see. So I hid outside behind like a stall and waited for it to be done. So when he came out, when it was over, my grandmother and the younger vampire was still in the bathroom, like finishing some type of ceremony. And he came out, and he was just so joyous and happy, and he was reciting Bible scriptures. I didn't take note of what the scriptures was, but the last word that I heard was berries. But I Googled it and looked it up, and I couldn't find berries in the Bible. So another church member that I know came up beside him, put her arm around him, and she was real happy. Like everybody was just celebrating that he just drove this stake into his heart. But there was no sign that he did it. We just knew that he did it.
So
then
he was gone then, right?
He was what?
He was gone then. If you drove the stake into his heart, then he was gone. He was no more, and the son was.
No, he was still. He came out. He didn't have the stake anymore. He wasn't hurt. He was happy. Like he was going into the bathroom to perform driving into his heart. But when he came out, he was happy that he did it. It was like a celebration. And I knew that the other vampire was still in there finishing off his part of the ceremony, whatever he was going to do to take that other one's place.
Okay.
So that was the first scene of the dream. And then I went into this fellowship hall, and there was a dozen of donuts from Dunkin' Donuts. And then I saw 12 more on the other side of the counter of a dozen donuts. And I thought that's so strange. Like, why don't they have this dozen with the other dozen? Like it was 12 boxes of a dozen in one spot, and then just one dozen in another spot. And I just thought that was crazy. Like in my head, I was like, this does not make sense. They should have moved these donuts to be with the other donuts. So then one thing that was highlighted in this part to me, I went to get a bottle of water next to the donuts, and there was none. And I was so insulted. Like I was actually angry that they would not have water in this church. So then I leave that scene, and I'm walking back down the hall to try and get out of the building. And I see my son sitting in a chair, so I wait for him to follow me. Well, I come across these two women, and they look like, to me, I thought they were like sisters. And I knew that I didn't want to be around them. They were real mean and catty, and I knew I just had to get through them. And they were bragging that that they wrote their grocery list, and that their sons added bread to it. And I even thought, I thought to myself, yeah, if my son wanted bread on the grocery list, I would be excited too. So, so a funny part that happened next, I knew I had to fit through them, and I was embarrassed because I knew my hips wouldn't fit, and I didn't want to ask them to move. So when I came up to them, the chair supernaturally moved, like so I could fit. And I thought to myself, like, wow, like, Lord, you even care that I'm embarrassed about my hips being too wide to fit through the chairs. So then after that, I went outside, and I noticed there was a mother with two daughters, and they were like kind of Gothic looking, covered in piercings, blue and purple hair. And the mother was just telling her daughters that she's so proud to be their mother and so proud to look like them. And then my dream turned into a rapture dream. I looked at the sky, and I saw Jesus walking on the clouds, and I was trying to comprehend it. He was wearing a red robe. And after I woke up, that red robe was highlighted to me. And he had a lamb on the cloud with him, and he was doting all over this lamb. And I couldn't comprehend it because I knew it was him on the cloud, but I thought it was strange that he wasn't looking down at us. He was worried about this lamb. And then when my son yelled, he was behind me, and he said, "Mom, it's Jesus." And then after that, I started like floating up like a feather, and I thought to myself, wow, I cannot believe it's actually time for this. And then I woke up.
Wow. It's about 4 hours to unpack that, to be honest. I'm going to hit like 100,000 foot highlight.
Okay.
Just because there's so much symbology from suicidal vampires to, 12 Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I think it's just fascinating. There's a lot of symbology there. The idea of vampires is really interesting. You're in a high school, and you even said they were like old school. Hollywood has done everything they can to romanticize the idea of people that literally drink blood. I'll just let that sit. If you know what I'm talking about, great. If you don't, do some research. But the idea of, this being somehow a romantic thing, a cool thing, the slick back hair, this and this and this. I feel like God is wanting to bring something to our attention or your attention and wanting you to learn from it, which is why the setting is in a high school. You're going down a hallway, which means you're in a transition in your learning, which means that God is about to show you something at a much deeper level than what you thought of before. The fact that you go into the bathroom represents several things. It can represent a place of dumping, getting rid of things, a place of cleansing, and also a place of self-reflection. So it's in that place that the father or the senior vampire decides, I'm going to drive the stake through my own heart. Literally, I'm going to commit suicide, but it's really the idea of sacrifice related to allowing the next generation or the son to be able to take his place and to thrive. So that apparently happens, but then he comes out. So the result wasn't the result that you would think in a movie of the vampire turning to dust and being no more. The result is there's some sort of transition or transformation that happened that allowed the son really to be free to be what he was called to be. And so that's the idea of breaking a generational curse. That's why it's in a school, in a bathroom, in a place of self-reflection.
I'm sorry, you just broke up. Sorry.
Can you hear me? So that's the idea of being in a school, in a bathroom, in a place of self-reflection, where a sacrifice is made, breaking a generational curse. Okay, so that's like the first scene. So the second scene was the Dunkin' Donuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there was a box of 12, and then there were 12 boxes of 12 on the other side of the counter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the 12 of 12 represents the government institutions of the world. And I believe particularly the UN and or what people like to refer to as the New World Order. They're literally the systems of man. 12 times 12, right? The 144. It's the idea of the government of governments, which is what the UN represents. The United Nations is a government of governments, right? So, but the one box of 12 represents the disciples.
Okay.
And they're literally on two sides of a counter. And so what it's saying is the counter to the government of governments, the New World Order, the systems of man, all of the control and the things that they want to put on us, including everything that's happening now, all of the arguments related to many ridiculous, quote, science-based ideas that we need new legislation and spend tons of money and doing all these things. And every single one of the elites that proposes things against, like, oh, I don't know, global warming, follows absolutely nothing that would help further that idea at all. They all get in their corporate jets and fly halfway around the world and spend ridiculous amounts of money, and their carbon footprints are like that of a small country, every single one of them. And they don't believe a word they're saying, but they want to use that as an excuse to dump legislation and control on us to be able to control the peasants, as it were. Well, the counter to that is truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free, which I think is fascinating that that's like the motto verse of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. But it's also, it's a counter to the government systems of men is just one box of 12, which is the idea of what was founded in the time of Jesus and then to the day of Pentecost, and then it's literally spread all over the world. It's the 12, simple, basic 12 guys that have propagated the story of the gospel and the existence of the church throughout all of history. That's a counter to all of the government of governments that are trying to do all of these things. What's also interesting, too, is the idea that they're in a box. So the box represents a level of veiling. And again, it goes back to the verse in Scripture. I just hear the verse that talks about the earth groans for the sons and daughters of God to be revealed. And so that's it. Like, we unbox those 12, and they're counter to the 12 of 12. And I would say equal to or greater than. Equal to the task of countering that, but we're greater than, because greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. It's fascinating to me how I have no idea what dreams people are going to share on any given night that we do live dream interpretation. And God consistently every time, go back and watch him, will weave a pattern throughout the whole thing. I think the next part of the dream you were talking about Jesus in a red robe, right?
Well, the next part was when I saw these two women, and they were bragging that their sons wanted bread on their grocery list.
They were
And
bragging sons wanting bread on their
I
grocery
thought
list.
they were bragging about it to each other, and I thought to myself, well, yeah, of course you would be happy that your son wants bread on the grocery list.
Right. Okay. And then after that, where did Jesus come in?
That was after that scene. I went outside and I saw a mother with her daughters bragging about her daughters. And then I looked at the sky and I saw the clouds looked weird. So I thought I knew to look at him. And then I saw him walking through. It kind of looked like a mountain in the background. And I saw him walking through to the front of the clouds, and he was wearing a red robe. And which really surprised me because I would always imagine white. So I did look it up, and it is I found Revelations 19:13. It says but that's not the rapture, but it says he'll be clothed in a vesture dripped in blood. But when I woke up, that robe was highlighted to me. Like I knew I was supposed to like Google it and figure it out. And then my son saw him, and when he saw him, I just instantly started floating up.
Awesome. Well, to me, the robe is the idea of he died on a tree, right? The wooden stake, the sacrifice, the lamb, the blood. It's kind of a counter to even the beginning of the dream, the whole idea of the suicidal vampire, which I think is just hilarious. But it's the idea literally of the son, not the father. The son is the one making the sacrifice so that all of humanity can live and be redeemed. The idea of bread just represents the idea of there's so much there. There's the yeast of the Pharisees. There's the connection with money. There's the idea of the loaves and the fishes. Basically, there's so many tie-ins. Like I said, it would just take hours to be able to break all that apart. We're 2 hours and 22 minutes into this. Awesome. But suffice it to say, the idea of bread also, and particularly when you're talking about Jesus in a blood-soaked robe, right, talks about the idea of communion bread, literally his body that was broken for us. And it was the kids wanting bread on the list. Like, we need this on the list. This is something we need. Get it for us. Get it from the grocery store. And then the next thing you see is Jesus with this blood-soaked robe. It's the idea of literally the bread and the wine, which is communion that we do in remembrance of him. What are we remembering? We're remembering that his body was broken for us. Literally the idea of the sacrifice, which again ties back to the original part of the dream. The original part of the dream was the idea of the counterfeit. The middle of the dream is the idea of the counter of the governments of the world with the disciples of Jesus, literally the Dunkin' Donuts, the ones that are being baptized, immersed, the day of Pentecost, fire, water, the mighty rushing wind. I mean, again, there's just to unpack every, hopefully you're catching the high points of what I'm saying, because there's just information there. And then at the end, the idea of the sons and daughters crying out and saying, we need this. We need the bread. We need the sacrifice. And the next thing you know, the response is Jesus comes down in the blood-soaked robe, and then your son begins to be elevated up to him. It's the idea of breaking generational curses, countering the plans and the systems and the control of the world. And that, Jesus has come not only to break the curse, but to redeem both the governments of the world, right? Isaiah 22:22, the government shall be upon his shoulders. The key of the house of David shall be upon his shoulders. Open doors and no man. We talked about that enough tonight. But also countering the idea of the counterfeit of the Hollywood fakery of the vampire romanticized system.
Mhm.
you know. And so, in a nutshell, what I believe that God is talking about is He's talking about the overthrow of the counterfeit, the overthrow of the government of governments of this world, trying to unite and create, you know, a one world system, a new world order, whatever, and the sacrifice of Jesus that not only redeems our children but calls them to Himself. There's so much depth. I mean, it's amazing to me when God decides to whisper in our ear at night, like, pay attention, because even though it's like, vampires, high school, donuts, you know, what does this mean? Like, there's so much there. Like, you could write a 20-page document on all of the symbology.
Yeah, as soon as I had it, I knew, because usually my dreams, like, I don't, like, they make sense, they're literal. That as soon as I woke up, I thought, this is meant to be interpreted. At least the first part, I felt like, was with the vampires.
Right. Wow. It's a fascinating dream. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. The depth of what God is doing is incredible. Fineport, can you turn your camera so you're upright? It looks a little glitchy. Yes. Try to see if I can connect you. Hey there. Can you hear me? There seems to be a delay or something happening. It's like you're moving in slow-mo. See if you can get that fixed. I don't know if it's on your end or my end. It seems like my Wi-Fi is actually working at the moment, so it might be on your side. Let me call on Olga in the meantime.
Hi, thank you for taking my dream again.
Absolutely.
So I had a dream that I went back to my old high school,
Okay.
but it's not the high school that I went to in real life. And I was sitting in a classroom with other people at a very long table. Everybody was sitting side by side. And I understood that I was, even though I graduated years ago, I was being kept there. And like they had no reason to keep me, but they still kept me there in order to graduate again, I guess. And at one point I was sitting there and I had a notebook from my notes from many, many years ago. And it was completely filled up with like notes. And they were telling me that I have to complete an assignment. And I went to the teacher and I said, well, I can't complete it because there's no blank pieces of paper. And she just persisted to tell me that I need to write somebody in a foreign country. Sort of like the kid, you know how kids had programs back in the day when they were like young, where they would write back and forth to people in different countries.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then I noticed that a piece of the paper was torn, and there was a date on it, 2015, possibly November 2015, but I'm not 100% sure.
Timestamp. That's interesting.
And then I walked out of the high school, and then I saw a girl that I used to go to high school with, and I kept telling her that they can't keep me here because I already graduated, and I even attended the graduation. And I think I even said they can't legally keep me here. Or the word legally was in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So it sounds like you're being held back, particularly in a time of training or in a place of that you've literally graduated from. I feel like it's the idea of legalism, it can be like a religious spirit. It's the idea that you're supposed to learn something. You've already graduated. You've done the assignments. You've done the work. And there's somebody in a position, apparently in a position of authority, that's trying to hold you in a place of not being able to progress to the next level. Do you have any idea who is keeping you there? Can I just tell you what I hear?
Yeah.
I hear the idea of you're keeping yourself there. Nobody, I mean, it's the dream is made in such a way that it's disarming. The dream is about you, but we don't think, why would I try to keep myself in school? Well, why would anybody try to keep you in school years after you've graduated and try to continue to give you a foreign assignment to somebody that you don't even know, that supposedly you're supposed to, do this or do that or whatever. I feel like it's the idea that there's something that you've learned, that you've taken notes on, that you've studied intently, that you've graduated from, that there's still a level of, and I just believe it's a level of confidence, that you feel like you're either not qualified or you haven't learned enough. And so you hold yourself in a position of being a student when actually you're a graduate. Does any of this make sense at all?
I mean, it makes sense. It
might be in just a particular area. It could be something like God is calling you to be a teacher, to lead a Bible study, teach a group of people, of women, of men, of whatever, to lead in some capacity. And it could be the feeling of like, well, I don't know, and what about this and what about that? It could also have to do with dreams. It could also have something to do with like the idea of spiritual intelligence or what God is showing you in dreams, particularly because God showed you this in a dream. Like you can't even discount the idea of having the medium in which God chooses to speak to you. Even the fact that you're having it in a dream, I think, is significant. But I feel like what it is God is wanting you to know that it's a free will choice for you to leave the school. You think of the idea of literally being trapped in a school. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? Like nobody's going to keep you in school. You're an adult now. You can do what you want. You've done this and this and this, and so I think again, the only one that could, what I'm hearing is the only one that could keep you in that place is yourself. It's not a condemnation on you at all, by the way. God is revealing this to you in a dream, so you know that you have graduated. Like this is a declaration from God that whatever the area, probably the area that you're thinking about right now, whatever God brings to mind as we're having this discussion, that, and if you've wondered, well, do I qualify? Do I have enough training? Can I do this? Can I do that? God is like saying, you're more than qualified. Your notebooks are full. You've studied, you've done the work. You don't need another assignment. It's time for you to literally go out and to do the thing for which you have been laboring to learn and to do. So, and I feel like it may have to do with a position of authority in particular. I feel like God is wanting you to step into a position of leading others. And he is saying, you're ready. That's the whole point of the dream, is he's saying, you're ready to go.
Okay.
And perhaps even on an international scale.
That's interesting.
There was an assignment to do with corresponding with somebody in another country. It's the idea of I don't know, it may be speaking. It may have something to do with speaking as well. But I feel like God has some great, incredible things for you. And he wants you to let yourself out of the school, to go out there and do it and know that he's with you. And release your sound, your gift, your being, be fully expressed, release yourself to the world. God created you. You didn't make yourself. You didn't give yourself the abilities. It's just like Moses. Well, who am I to speak? Well, who made the tongue? It's God's response. I did. So God made you. God made me. I can't take any credit for the gift of dream interpretation or anything else that I can do, because I didn't design myself. God just gave it to me. So it's all glory is back to Him, but it's also, we don't do God a service by playing small. So I'm not saying you are, but if there is any area of your life that you're playing small, I feel like, let the horses out of the gate, like go for it. Whatever you've desired to do, whatever God has put in your heart to do, whatever you've studied, you've been trained in, like let it out, like go for it and see what God does and how He meets you in that place. I think it'll be really freeing for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Thank you
That's
for
amazing.
interpreting. So
Absolutely.
I can't interpret my own dreams, so.
Well, I love it that you bring them here. So,
Right.
And you can learn. You can learn if you want to, but you're learning by just being here with us.
All right.
So,
Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Fine Port. Let me try you again. See if we can get you on here. Hey there. Can you hear me? I can see you, but it's moving like super slow and hesitating, and I can't hear a thing. Hello, hello. All right, unfortunately, that's not working. Joey Alexander.
Hi, John.
Hey, how are you?
I'm gonna let you pick.
The shortest one.
I'm good. So I had a dream a couple nights ago that's going in my dossier. I have most of it done, but the end of it I'm having trouble with. Or my husband had another dream about his dad that passed away. So you get to pick.
Give me the shortest one. Or if you just have a question about the one. If you have a question about the one in your dossier, we can do that.
Okay. Let me pull this up real fast. Okay, so I was playing softball in a park. There were two fields divided by a really tall row of pine trees. There were only 3 players on my team, so they sent me to the outfield. The outfield was covered in water by like about an inch of water. You disappeared. Can you hear me? Did he disappear?
I'm here.
Time. Okay. So a ball was hit and I chased it through the trees and onto the other field. No one over there wanted to pick it up because it looked like it was slimy from getting wet. I noticed that the other field was drier and they had a lot more people playing on the team. I picked up the ball and the slime was gone. It was just like wet leather. So then I got called to the principal's office, and because I hadn't finished an assignment and I was getting a warning that I needed to get it done, which is my dossier. I kept having to check on our dogs to make sure that they were still in the park. They were running around playing with other dogs, and I saw a girl giving a big black fat cat a shot in the cheek. She only got about half of it in, and the cat got away. Then I called my dogs again because they were running off. The girl came back and she was trying to catch a dog, and I confronted her, asking her what she was doing because all the dogs there were pets. She shrugged her shoulders and said something about finding strays, and at that point I knew she had killed the cat, and I asked her about it, and she said, yeah. And I said, you can't do that. They're people's pets. And she said, well, it didn't have a collar. And I said, the owner took the collar off so it wouldn't get caught on something in the park and choke. And then I woke up. So the whole shot with the cat and the dog things is where I'm kind of stuck.
So read me just that part again.
So I called my dogs to make sure that they were still in the park. They kept running around playing with other dogs. I saw a girl who was giving a big fat black cat a shot in the cheek. She only got about half of it in, and the cat got away. So
A shot like a syringe shot.
Yes, which I feel like it probably has something to do with the jab, but I'm still really confused about the dogs. So I yelled at my dogs again, and they came back closer. They kept wandering off, and I kept hollering, and they come running back. There was 2 of them. The girl came back trying to catch another dog, someone else's dog, and then I confronted her, asking her what she was doing. And I was like, these aren't your dogs, there's people's pets. And she shrugged her shoulders and said she was finding strays. And I said, there aren't any here, they all belong to someone. And at that point, I knew she'd killed the cat. I asked her if she killed it. She said yes. And I said, that's someone's pet. She said it didn't have a collar.
It wasn't her cat.
It wasn't her cat, no. And I said, she was like, it doesn't have a collar. And I said, well, the owner took the collar off so it wouldn't get caught on something in the park and choke it. And then she just walked off, and I called my dogs, and they came back to me, and I woke up.
So your dogs kept wandering off, and you kept calling them, and then they'd come over, and then they'd leave, and then they'd come over and they'd leave.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, do you know who this lady was shooting up this cat?
Nope.
So
Just
it
was a young girl. It was a young girl. That's all I.
Is there anything that you remember about her? Any distinguishing features, clothes, anything?
I think she had long hair, but other than that being young, that's all I remember.
Okay. Interesting. So, giving the cat half a shot in the mouth.
In the cheek, yeah.
Cheek.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Karen was shooting the cat. Yeah. I think the idea of pets, in my mind, just right now, I just feel like it's representing the idea of children. You know how pets are like part of the family, and whatever. But dogs representing the idea of, your dogs have the freedom to go. Or are you at like a dog park, or just at the park in general?
Just at the park, and it was the same park that the softball fields were at. So I'm guessing it was just a park in general.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what Shazam says here. Because there's a certain person that we all know well that does not have a good track record, especially with pets, such as dogs, fleas, anyway. That has to do with, shooting people in the cheek, or shooting cats in the cheek. I had a thought. It just left me. Lord, I can hear your interpretation. It's interesting that the cat was the one given the shot, and the cat died. And the idea that, well, that was somebody's cat. Well, it didn't have its papers. I mean, its collar.
Right.
It's the whole idea of cats tend to be a lot more independent than dogs typically. They tend to kind of do what they want to do. They, in a sense, they're just kind of known as a breed of animal that thinks for themselves. And so that's something that has to be held down and kind of controlled in such a way that, you know, in order to comply, let's just say. The dogs, they kind of wander off. They come back when you call them, then they wander off again. They're not really a threat to any sort of a system of control. The cat seems to be, just because they tend to not necessarily come when called, but also, you know, again, I just feel like this represents the idea of children, of things that they've tried to put on children in particular, and what the response has been, and what's happened medically afterwards. And I feel like it's a sidebar conversation in the midst of a much larger dream.
Yeah.
You know, but you said at the beginning you kind of felt that it had to do with this track. I would say continue to go down that track.
Okay.
That tack. One of the things you might want to look at is some of the experiments that have been done on dogs in relation to this discussion and the people that are involved in the discussion about what happened to the cat. Because what I think it's doing is it's creating a setting of a time frame of now. So it's kind of a timestamp, because if we would have had this discussion 2 years ago, nobody would have any idea what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about now, because everybody lives in the modern world and it's been the reality.
Right.
So I feel like there's a timestamp there, but I also feel like it's interesting the freedom that the dogs enjoy versus the cat that doesn't have identity with them is used kind of as an example, or forced to comply with the whims of this young girl.
Well, in the first part of the dream, the softball games, I feel like, relate to the church. One field was covered in water, filled with the Holy Spirit. The other field was dry and had a lot more people involved with it in that game. And so then tying that to the dogs, it was because it was all in the same dream, but maybe they're not really tied. It's just an ongoing conversation of different things.
Yeah. Yeah. I would continue to go down the road that you're thinking. I think it's good. I think it's interesting. Also, don't discount your personal side in the dream. Like, what does cats and dogs mean to you? You don't have to answer, but I mean, just, you know, God is speaking to you in a particular language, in a particular way, for a particular reason. So don't be afraid to ask the question, what does this mean to me? And what do I think of when I think of this?
Okay.
Holy cow, is it almost 11? Jeez. Okay.
It's only
Anyway.
10 here. Waco time, it's only 10.
I was in Waco.
That's right.
Thanks, Joey. I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
All right, Kathy. Waco.
That's right.
Thanks, Joey. Appreciate you sharing. Kathy, can you hear me? All right, Kathy.
Hey!
Hey.
Yay!
I can hear the echo in the background. So whatever else is playing.
Hey, John, thanks for. Can you hear me?
Hey.
Yay!
I can hear the echo in the background. So whatever else is playing.
Hey, John, thanks for. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, darn it. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me
Is there
now?
a way I can go out and come back in?
Yeah, try it. Go ahead and try it. Fine port. Let's try you again. Can you hear me? Hey, I can't hear you. Oh, you kidding me? Do you have headphones or anything? I don't know if you could try that. Yeah, shoot. No, I can't hear a word you're saying. Darn it. Well, thanks for trying again. Appreciate it. All right, Vic. Can you hear me, Vic? Vic Rose. Okay,
I
Kathy.
can go out and
Can you hear me,
come
Kathy?
back in. You're in the show. Can you hear me? I can't hear.
I can
I
hear you.
lost the sound.
Can you hear me?
I tried to print out the dream so I could be ready to share it with you, and when I did that, the sound.
Well, it looks like there's some technical difficulties tonight. I'm so sorry if we didn't get to you. We tried to get to everybody tonight. Went almost 3 hours, but I think we're just going to call it a night. Thank you so much for everybody that tried, everybody that was on. We sure appreciate it. We love, love, love hearing the dreams. Thank you for sharing your dreams with us. We sure appreciate it, and it's a pleasure and an honor to be able to work with you on dreams, to teach you about dreams, to interpret your dreams, and all of the things that God has for us that are dream related. Again, that being said, super, super, super excited to announce that we've launched the Dream Course. The Dream Course is available. If you're interested in dreams, you want to go deeper into dreams, we've developed a course that doesn't rehash the basics, that doesn't teach the Bible study of dreams, you don't watch somebody else interpret dreams. It gives you the opportunity to interpret dreams at your own pace, and then to come back and hear a master dream interpreter actually go through step by step the exact same process you go through to interpret dreams. It's a great gift. We have gift certificates if you want to purchase that for somebody for Christmas. But if you're interested in growing in dream interpretation, we designed this course based on all the questions and all the things that people ask. So as we head out tonight, I want to show you, for those of you that haven't seen, our team put together just an incredible intro that shows us a little bit about the Dream Course. So we'll do that, and then we'll sign off. Thanks for being a part tonight, and we'll see you next time.
Scientists say everyone dreams. Our brains are made for dreaming. God holds the keys to our dreams, and you can understand His messages. Access blueprints from heaven. Hear the whispers of the lover to his bride. It's time to master the skills. Access biblical decode instructions and unlock the secret love language of God to you.